It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE SIPC.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Oh.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
For up to 50% off selected floors and beds, and up to an additional £250 off your total flooring order. Carpet Right for life. Terms and conditions apply.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
How do you make the most understated Range Rover even more striking? Paint it Santorini black. Fit it with privacy glass. A full leather ebony interior. Then place it on 21-inch gloss black alloy wheels. The Range Rover Velar are dynamic black. Understated has rarely been so bold. Limited numbers available for a limited price. Search Range Rover Velar, Land Rover, above and beyond.
Limited availability while stocks last at participating UK Land Rover retailers. Check with your local retailer.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
This is our story. The Birds of Prey.
Yeah. Roman is building an army. He's after all of us. We gotta clean the city from the inside out.
Critics are saying Margot Robbie is brilliant as Harley Quinn.
Hi, boys.
A fantastic assault on the senses. An irresistible riot of popcorn fun. Woo! Brilliantly acted and very funny. 4 stars. Birds of Prey. In cinemas now. Certificate 15.
It was a Sunday morning when I jumped on the tube.
And decided to pop down to Greenwich via
a large indoor jungle.
And when I got there, I was captivated by a sparkling
scary dinosaur just standing there right in front of me.
So off we went to Wembley Park
to look at the colourful fish.
Tap into the wonderful world of off-peak London. Travel in zones 2 to 6 for £1.50. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
£1.50 is an adult off-peak pay-as-you-go fare for a journey not going via Zone 1 on Tube, DLR and most London Overground services. Always touch in and out with the same card or device to pay the right fare.
What do you do to be an everyday superhero, like Mary? So I know it's tempting to pour used cooking oil straight down the sink, but I spoke to the local council and they said the best way to get rid of oil or fat is to collect it, once it's cooled down, of course, in a used container, and then you can scoop it out and put it in the bin.
Cooking oils and fats block thousands of pipes every year. Save our sewers, rivers and seas by putting them in the bin, where they belong. Visit thameswater.co.uk/bin it. Together, we can care for the environment.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What sea sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm John Tucker, the Bloomberg Newsroom with this Bloomberg Business Flash. Solid gains from earlier, still holding, keeping the major indexes on track for weekly gains right now. The stock averages kind of wobbling between small gains and losses. Investors focused on another round of mostly solid corporate earnings. Tech companies gaining, chipmaker NVIDIA, that was a standout. It handily beat analyst profit forecasts for the fourth quarter. We have the S&P 500 right now 2 points higher at 3376. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down about 8 points. We're at 29,415. The NASDAQ Composite Index is up 20 points. That's up 0.2%. We're at 9732. Measure volatility, that's down almost 0.5%. The VIX at 1409. We do have a bid to Treasuries. The 10-year yield right now is down 3 basis points at 157. It is up by 10-30 seconds right now in price. And as far as crude oil, that's getting a bid today. Brent up 75 cents a barrel at 57.09. NYMEX is at 47 cents a barrel at 51.90. We check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, yesterday, Scott Meinert, who's the Global Chief Investment Officer of Guggenheim Partners, came out with one of the most bearish notes I have ever seen yet in this cycle. He first started saying that the coronavirus is a looming economic problem, but sort of indicated that that was just one of many of them, and then wrote this: I have never in my career seen anything as crazy as what's going on right now. I have said before that we've entered the silly season, but I stand corrected. We are in the ludicrous season. Axel Merck joining us now, President and Chief Investment Officer of Merck Investments. Do you agree, Axel?
We ended the ludicrous season a long time ago. The question is we still need to live and make a living and try to make sense of some of it, right? First we need to understand what's happening and so forth. But in the context of the virus, right, we've always had shocks. We know that usually markets were the worst when we've most talked about them. So the fact that we're talking about the virus probably means that we're not at the peak yet, because otherwise you'll talk to other even bigger experts, right? But in all seriousness, the U.S. is more isolated from a lot of what's happening here, and so that may well be one of the reasons why the U.S. is doing comparatively well. And so we are focused on all kinds of other things. And I just might to remind people, we were talking about World War III at the beginning of this year, which didn't quite materialize. So markets have a habit of moving on, and with interest rates as low as they are, we quote-unquote discount the short-term things, and so we live happily ever after.
In terms of living happily ever after, is that driven simply by the fact that there's so much cash sloshing around the global system with, central banks very, very accommodative?
Well, your question, if interest rates were at 6% in the U.S., markets wouldn't be as happy. I mean, from that point of view, certainly it's correct. One minor issue I have with that statement is that every time a crisis hits, we lower rates. And I was arguing last year that lower rates don't exactly help the trade war, right? Similarly, a rate cut doesn't cure an illness. And so I don't think that rates is everything that's driving it, but one thing, of course, that takes place when we have money printing is we take perceived risk out of the market. Risk premia get compressed, and ultimately what it does, it doesn't foster healthy capital allocation. But at the same time, yes, I mean, if we had a more serious disruption, and right now, by all means, there are certain local disruptions, conferences get canceled, and there's a fallout from that, supply chains get disrupted, but big business is able to deal with some of that. So it's not as simple as saying, hey, the central banks are foaming here the runway, and therefore everything is fine. I do think central banks play a role in this, are a very important piece of the puzzle, but it's not everything that's going on.
I want to pick up on what you said with respect to misallocating capital. People are looking at how companies are using extra cash they're generating to buy back their shares, pay out dividends. They're not using it to invest in their businesses necessarily. We're seeing capital expenditures continue to decline. How long can this continue with an expansion versus having it bleed into the economy in a negative way?
Well, last time we talked about Goldilocks was in 2004, 2005. It didn't end too well, but it lasted for several more years. It's very difficult to time those sort of things. And so the concern I have is that everybody talks about how economy is slowing down. I'm actually more concerned about the other end. It's not the most likely scenario, but what if all this accommodative monetary policy, the fiscal stimulus we have, and presumably we're going to get a Chinese stimulus in due course, is actually going to get us a hot economy with inflation? Everybody says it's a good problem to have, but how do you tighten monetary policy when corporations have gotten weaker, when they stretch their balance sheets? We cannot afford to have higher rates. It's one of the reasons we have these low rates. But what if something goes wrong at the other end of the spectrum, that things are too good, so to speak? Then the Fed needs to tighten and everything crumbles, right? And so a credit-driven society is a more quote-unquote efficient society. Greenspan used to say that, but it's a more fragile society in some ways, because when things go wrong, people fall through the cracks. And so, yes, we can sustain this for an extended period. I'm not convinced that this is the best way to move forward, but then again, I'm just an observer here, right, or a humble participant in the markets. I'm not the one calling the shots, so we just have to deal with the cards we're dealt with.
So, Axel, just switching gears a little bit, looking at commodities, there's an area that has certainly felt the pain, maybe reflecting some of the global economic uncertainty, maybe tied to the coronavirus. One commodity that is not worried seems to be gold. So we're seeing a lot of good movement in gold. What is your thoughts about gold here, given some of those uncertainties?
Well, we've long looked at and invested in the gold market. The one thing we observe is that investors want to have their cake and eat it. And what I mean with that is that usually when you have a crisis, people would run to cash. But maybe because people have had such amazing gains over the years, they rather diversify to gold or even more volatile gold mining, so that with a small addition to the portfolio, they can get diversification. I'm not suggesting everybody should do that, but we see that certainly happening. We do some of that ourselves because ultimately cash isn't all that attractive, and so that's why people use those sort of things. What we see in that sector is that because the price of gold is moving, it attracts a lot of traders, and so speculative positions are at record highs and so forth. Those speculators love it when things are moving. Those are in there. The diversification folks are in there. The folks who say, well, whatever's going to happen in the medium term, it can't end too well, those investors are there. So we see that there is really an early wave of investors coming back in, and on the gold mining side, companies are far more prudent with how they manage these mines than they had been in the last cycle.
Just about 30 seconds here. You deal with the cards that you're dealt. What are you doing? What are you allocating your money to?
We haven't changed all that much. We bought a little bit in China during the Chinese New Year, and to the extent we could in U.S. markets, but that's really just play money. And again, that's not investment advice here. But beyond that, we've really stuck to our guns and tried to look at the longer term picture. And so yes, we have exposure to risk assets, but yes, we do have significant assets also to allocations to something like gold and gold mining.
Axel Merck, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your thoughts and commentary. Axel Merck, President and Chief Investment Officer of Merck Investments, based in San Francisco. Interesting to kind of get some thoughts about, gold as a place to go for not just safety, but maybe obviously diversification. And to the extent you do have some concerns about global growth, certainly a place to park some capital in a standard portfolio.
Yeah, and you have central bank buying, right? You have the diversification, the de-dollarization that some people talk about from Russia and China, with an increase in gold and a decrease, mild decrease at that, in Treasury holdings. Interesting, though, to hear what he had to say and how you navigate at a time when you kind of feel like the clock is ticking on Goldilocks.
Yep.
But you kind of don't see anything that will make it in.
Exactly right. Looking at the markets real quick here, mixed is the way to phrase it. S&P up 4, Dow down just 1 point, NASDAQ up 26 points, about 0.3%. So a mixed market here as we close out a busy trading week. This is Bloomberg Markets.
For up to 50% off selected floors and beds. For first-class fitting. For kicking your heels off. For overexcited kids. And pets. For thrills and spills. For a special welcome home. For up to an additional £250 off your total flooring order. Carpet Right for life. Terms and conditions apply.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Listen, we know you're not here for ads, but while you're waiting for the music, cybercriminals might be waiting for you to expose your login credentials and payment information over Wi-Fi. Help keep your online activity private with Norton 360. It gives you multiple layers of protection, including secure VPN with bank-grade encryption, device security, password manager, and PC cloud backup. Go to uk.norton.com to get all-in-one protection starting at $24.99 for your first year. Terms apply. That's uk.norton.com.
You could find a fiver, a tenner, a 20, or even a crisp 50 inside the Sun on Sunday. That's right, cash! Yes, real banknotes inside the paper. We're giving away a wallet-busting amount of cash this weekend only in the Sun on Sunday. It pays to read The Sun. T's and C's apply.
The famous five were discussing their next adventure to Cardiff. Let's visit the Millennium Centre, said Dick. The National Museum, added Julian. The castle, cried Anne. Dick jumped up. We'd better leave now. Cardiff's so far away. Relax, said George. It's faster than you think by train. Anyway, we can't go yet. You're still in your pyjamas. London to Cardiff in as little as 1 hour 42 minutes. So adventures are closer than you think. Great Western Railway. Adventures start here. Fastest train from Paddington to Cardiff Central. Terms and conditions apply.
Financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Is there any bank right now in the U.S. that you think is a buy?
Do you think Chairman Powell has lost the market?
Jeff Bezos is no dope. What's the big ka-ching?
The big question, I think, for investors is free cash flow.
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
The U.S. tariffs actually hurt both China and the U.S.
Large strategics are looking to either buy or invest in innovation.
Soybeans and corn have been basically at or below the cost of production for about 4 or 5 years.
What we see more bonds, more yield. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Coming up, it's getting predictable. Markets shaking off any and all fears of coronavirus, posting new record highs as investors take a look at a sanguine economy. We're going to speak about that. Plus, we're going to talk about love, falling in love. All sorts of falling in love, in particular with Bloomberg functions. Right now, let's head over to our own John Tucker for a Bloomberg Business Flash. John.
Scaring me. Right now, Lisa, we have a strong first half of the week giving way to kind of a muted finish. Investors growing a little more cautious following updates on the coronavirus outbreak. Now, as for the S&P 500, it is on track for a weekly gain of 1.4%. Right now, up just about 4 points. To get some economic data this morning, retail sales advancing for the fourth month in a row, rising 0.3% in January. 9 of the 13 retail categories were up. led by building materials. But you also had a gauge of underlying demand. That was pretty much flat, a sign that sales could waver. Also, U.S. factory output dropping for the month of January, depressed by the production halt of Boeing's troubled 737 MAX jetliner. Vinny Del Giudice has more in this report.
The 737 MAX stoppage will probably hurt throughout the first half of the year. Chicago-based Boeing received 0 aircraft orders. We're talking all models in January. But factory output, excluding aircraft, was actually up last month. That's a sign, perhaps, of stabilization in other sectors. Total factory output last fell in September and October. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
As far as earnings, more than 3/4 of S&P 500 companies have reported earnings. The results so far show pretty solid growth. Companies expected to report overall profit growth of just under 1%. S&P 500 right now, again, up 4 points. We're at 3378. The Dow Jones Industrial Average 7 points lower at 29,415. The Nasdaq Composite Index is up 27 points. That's up 0.3 at 9739. We check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
John Tucker, thank you so much. We have certainly a mixed day in the equity markets, a little bit up, a little bit down. Let's see where the action is with the small cappers. Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson. Dave, what are you looking at?
You can put them in the down category, Paul. No love for the Russell 2000 in today's trading. It's down 0.2%, and the S&P 500's up 0.1%. So, yeah, smaller companies trailing again. That's how things have been shaping up lately, and today is more the same. The Russell's steepest drop belongs to Pulse Biosciences, whose ticker is PLSE. The medical device maker has fallen almost 36%. U.S. regulators ruled the company's proposed dermatology device isn't equivalent to a product already on the market. That's a setback in terms of gaining approval. Live Person, ticker LPSN, has lost 23.5%. The Customer Service and Sales Network posted a wider fourth quarter loss than analysts expected, based on the Bloomberg survey. And Car Guru's ticker CARG has declined 23%. The online auto marketplace's profit forecasts for this quarter and year were lower than estimates. The Russell's biggest gain belongs to BioXcel Therapeutics, ticker BTAI. The drug developer has risen 60.5%. SunTrust lifted its 12-month share price estimate on BioXcel more than $150. Right now, BioXcel trading at $38 a share. And Immunogen, ticker IMGN, has gained about 24%. The drug maker had an unexpected fourth quarter profit as revenue was far above estimates. Immunogen's earnings forecast for this year also beat projections. So there you go, the small cap stocks of the day.
Paul?
Yes.
It's Valentine's Day. And Dave Wilson, it's Valentine's Day, and you're going to stick around even though you are trying to leave the room in every way, shape, and form. And so I think it's a good time for us to talk about love and falling in love with different Bloomberg functions every day when we come in, what we look at first thing in the morning. And I thought this would be a good time to just reflect on our passion and frankly, our bonds in particular, because that's really what I focus on when I come in. And in addition to taking a look at the ongoing indices of stocks and bonds, I also look at the junk bond yields and the investment grade bond yields.
And how do you do that?
LF98YW. Index GP. I'm getting a look from the control room, and I look at that every morning.
Works. And the yields are going down.
Yields going down. I also look at NI Most Sent, which is a look at the most sent articles. And I find this really compelling.
That's a new one for me.
Because people usually send the articles that they find compelling on some level. And I find that to be really great.
NI Most Sent.
And I filter out ETF flows with ETF Go.
Interesting. Well,
Dave Wilson, you're trying to leave. You can't leave. You're going to join us with your functions.
Well, okay, fine. If you want to talk about the beginning of the day, most. Actually, during the day, too. The most active stocks, the biggest gains, the biggest losses. I look at American Depository receipts as well because I report on them at 1 o'clock New York time every day. And then, of course, there's my chart of the day, and there's two functions. I mean, if love is, you don't want to live without something, I can't live without these two. G, which actually is the function I use to draw most of the charts, and CIX for custom indexes. So that way, if I want to take a couple of sets of numbers and put them together, I can do that. Or if I want to get some numbers from elsewhere and show them on the Bloomberg terminal, I can do that too.
That's amazing.
Well, my most loved function is a labor of love. It is BI Go for Bloomberg Intelligence. This function will get
Here we
you
go,
to
everybody.
the
This is actually
best.
Sincere.
This is the best research on Wall Street.
You created
Equities,
this
fixed
team.
income, and I was part of a team that helped create this 10 years ago, thanks to Tom Secunda and Beth Mazzio and a bunch of other folks. And we now have 300 analysts around the world providing research on 2,000 companies, 130 industries, and they do a phenomenal job. And BI Go, it really makes the Bloomberg terminal really valuable.
Do you want to offer up any thanks to anybody? Any special shout-outs? You can go to your next one.
No, this is it. I mean, I also love FlyGo. Anytime you want to travel, FlyGo tells you which flights to go. And you're booking your own travel. That's key. Bio. So when somebody walks in here, I'm like, who are they? What do they do? Bio, the person's name, and they got all the cool information. But how many functions are there? Like 30
million? Yeah, you never really.
And I think the most diehard user out there might know 20 or 30.
Yeah, it's true. Dave, I've got to say, your charts of the day are really phenomenal, and I just want to offer up a little bit of appreciation to you because, every day you come in and you nail it home. I'm curious, what are you looking at today?
Oh, today is all about the growth versus value argument for stocks, that it really comes down to two industries, technology and energy. It looks at the weighting of those groups and all the others within the S&P 500 growth and value indexes. And suffice it to say that growth, people love technology, not so much in the value side. And there's a bit more love for energy stocks in the value index than in growth by a big margin. And that's not a good thing because it's the one group among the 11 main ones in the S&P 500 that's down for the last 12 months.
Can I just say, I can't take anything that you're saying seriously with this
music in the background. Thank you, Sam, for the music.
Well, just a special shout out to Sam Lenga, our producer, who put together this incredible soundtrack, and she's in there having conniptions. But I will say, Dave Wilson, thank you for all of your contributions on this Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you.
And happy Valentine's Day
to you, Paul. One more thing.
Please carry on.
It's not only the birthday of our founder and owner, Mike Bloomberg.
Okay.
It's also my brother's birthday.
Happy birthday.
He's got a big
one. To Dave Wilson's brother. And
Alan,
to
enjoy
Mike
the
Bloomberg.
There you go.
And that was our love affair with the Bloomberg terminal.
That's right.
On Valentine's Day. You doing anything special for Valentine's Day, either of you?
Eagles concert.
Ooh, that's awesome.
Weekend. We'll have a nice dinner this weekend. Tonight, it's amateur hour.
There you go. And this might have been amateur hour as well. Right now, let's head down to 901 Studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager.
All right, Lisa, thank you. President Trump says he has the legal right to ask his attorney general to intervene in criminal cases. He made that assertion on Twitter this morning, a day after Attorney General William Barr told ABC News President Trump shouldn't assert things on Twitter.
I cannot do my job here at the department with a constant background commentary that undercuts me.
Barr's trying to tamp down a firestorm after stepping in to reduce the sentencing recommendation for longtime Trump confidant Roger Stone. That move led 4 career prosecutors to resign in quick succession this week. U.S. Health Secretary Alex Azar says American experts are ready to head to China to help investigate the coronavirus. He tells CNN they're just waiting for clearance from the Chinese government.
China's facing an unprecedented public health crisis. I mean, look, they've got 60 million of their citizens in a geographic quarantine. They're facing the complete stressing of their infrastructure and public health system.
And Azar says that may explain some of the confusion over reporting of the outbreak, but he says it's important that the World Health Organization hold China accountable for transparency and cooperation. The death toll is now close to 1,400, with more than 63,000 infections confirmed under a new reporting method. Today marks 2 years since a massacre that sparked a youth-led movement for gun control. 17 students and teachers were shot and killed on this day in 2018 at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida.
This tragedy will forever be with us, but As a community, I can tell you the students have expressed a tremendous amount of courage, resiliency.
That's Broward County, Florida School Superintendent Robert Runcie. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
A pack needs someone to follow.
It's got to be important for somebody to have a breakout moment.
Don't look now, but they're behind you.
Imports declined 2.8%.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Sources tell us that agreement is expected to include commitments on U.S. intellectual property.
With Karen Moscow and Nathan Hager.
Could we see that play into the results and the forward guidance?
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
You know your body, and you know when something's off, when something doesn't feel quite right. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, rashes, and fever. They could be signs of lupus. Listen to your body. Take care of yourself. We're here to help you take control of your health. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, and try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
For up to 50% off selected floors and beds, and up to an additional £250 off your total flooring order. Carpet Right for life. Terms and conditions apply.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
At Wix, we'll create your dream kitchen from design to show-off ready and take care of everything. And now, save a third on showroom kitchen units. Book your free design appointment today. Cure your house embarrassment with Wix. For minimum spend, terms and exclusions, see wix.co.uk.
This is our story.
The birds of prey. Yeah. Roman is building an army. He's after all of us. We gotta clean the city from the inside out.
Critics are saying Margot Robbie is brilliant as Harley Quinn.
Hi, boys.
A fantastic assault on the senses. An irresistible riot of popcorn fun. Brilliantly acted and very funny. 4 stars. Birds of Prey. In cinemas now. Certificate 15.
You could find a $5, a $10, a $20, or even a crisp 50 inside The Sun on Sunday. That's right, cash. Yes, real banknotes inside the paper. We're giving away a wallet-busting amount of cash this weekend only in The Sun on Sunday. It pays to read The Sun. T's and C's apply.
The UK has now left the EU, and we are in a transition period until the end of the year. Throughout this period, the government will be forging new partnerships with the EU and the rest of the world. This could lead to new arrangements for trade, travel, and business. To find out about the changes and how they might affect you, go to gov.uk/transition.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London, Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Yeah, I'm John Tucker from the Bloomberg Newsroom with this Bloomberg Business Flash. We had some rather uninspiring figures on retail sales today. Investors continue to assess contrasting data from China on how the coronavirus is spreading. That adds up to a kind of muted stock indexes right now. S&P 500 up about 5 points. The Dow is 5 points lower. That's at 29,418. The Nasdaq Composite Index is up 31 points. That's up 0.3%. We're at 97.43. Chipmaker NVIDIA, travel giant Expedia jumping after making some strong forecasts for today. And right now we have treasuries, the yield at 158. There is a bid to treasuries, 9.30 seconds in price. The yield is down by about 3 basis points right now. And there's also a bid to crude oil, Brent crude right now, up 83 cents a barrel, 57.18. And NYMEX crude is up 59 cents at $52 even a barrel. And we check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
Now on Bloomberg Markets, Munis in Focus with Joe Mysak.
Focus on Munis is brought to you by Build America Mutual. Is your municipal bond investment safe even if the next recession reduces public revenues? Yes. AA guaranteed. BAM. Municipal bond insurance protects against everything that causes a default. Visit buildamerica.com. Joe Mysak, editor, Bloomberg Brief, municipal markets guru, joins us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. Joe, I know Bloomberg News hosted a panel this week of some money managers. What was the takeaway as it relates to the municipal bond market?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. That was a swell event. We had 4 buyers, and Amanda Albright was the moderator. And, at one point she asked, what keeps you awake at night? And one of them said, I actually sleep pretty well. And they weren't, the thing is,
Sounds like a deep conversation.
Right now in the municipal market, there are not too many credit concerns. So, once you take out the credit concerns and, maybe, what's a credit concern? Perhaps the state of Illinois, city of Chicago, right? Puerto Rico seems to be getting things together. But, take away the credit concerns and you worry about, low interest rates might start to sap demand for mutual funds because we've seen, I think, 58 weeks in a row of inflows into municipal bond mutual funds.
All right. So hold on a second. Everybody's sleeping well. Nobody has a problem sleeping except for Guy Davidson, who's the chief investment officer of the muni debt business for AllianceBernstein. And he comes out and he's like, you guys are all sleeping well. And that's giving me some
right.
anxiety.
You know, because you have to think, well, at some point, an economic downturn, and, you know, of course, now a couple of days later, there's more and more concern about the coronavirus, and you know, we'll see. But that's something that, you know, it's on the horizon, but we don't know where it is on the horizon. It's way out there.
So
we think.
So what are we seeing on the new issuance calendar, given that we've had 58 weeks in a row of inflows into mutual funds?
You know, issuance has sort of slacked off a bit. We had a pretty, you know, robust January, and I think the latest visible supply figure is around 12 billion or so, which is below the 2020 average of 13 billion. And of course, next week we have a holiday shortened week, and this week, for all practical purposes, was a holiday shortened week because of, you know, sailing into a 3-day weekend. So things are, you know, right now a little slack.
So this week we saw the U.S. Treasury sell 30-year bonds with the lowest yield on record, which was a really incredible milestone at a time when they're trying to extend the duration of the overall Treasury portfolio just to take advantage of these incredibly low borrowing costs. In the muni market, it can't move as quickly in response to these low rates because there isn't necessarily the regular issuance from all of the different localities. I'm wondering, what is the length of time that states and local governments have where they have to get approval from the voters before they can go and raise money, right? I mean, how quickly can they respond to these incredibly low rates?
Well, you know, with a revenue bond issue, you have a pretty short window. But, you know, again, it's probably measured in weeks to months.
So how much are we seeing some of these local governments start to propose things now that perhaps they wouldn't have in the past that they could finance, like, say, a better tunnel from New Jersey to New York?
Well, you know, really...
Anytime. I'm going to plug that every time we talk about muni.
Joe, you've got to get that gateway project
Jersey,
finance.
let's get that done, will you? The transportation issuance is actually up smartly over the last, say, 12 months. So they have been thinking about this several years ago. And the thing about municipalities is that they very rarely respond to rates. What they respond to is, do we need the money? Well, let's go borrow it. I mean, I can recall, you know, when tax-exempt yields were in the 13s, 13% tax-free. And municipalities still came to market because, hey, we need the money. Here's a project. We need to finance it. Let's go. Hey, interest rates, they are what they are. So right now, it's funny, you bring up the 30-year, and the 30-year Treasury is a little over 2, and the 30-year municipal, as measured by the BVAL yield curve, is about 183. So we're still comfortably below Treasury, thank heavens.
Joe Mysak, thank you so much.
That's it.
Happy Valentine's Day, Joe Mysak. We appreciate you. Joe Mysak, editor of the Bloomberg Brief, focused on the municipal bond market, here with us in our interactive broker studios. Interesting to see some of the trends. I got to say that 30-year auction was just notable to me because there was an expectation that you would see a record low yield at sale, but it came in even below that due to all of the demand. And you know, I really have a question here. Is this a demand from the United States, from pensions, from long-term investors? Or is this an importing of deflation from overseas? Is this international investors?
Yeah, I think what we've heard, even in Joe's taxable municipal bond market, we're seeing a lot of demand coming from overseas looking for yield. So I think there's part of that as well.
Yeah, if you look at the yield differential, for example, on 10-year U.S. bonds versus German bonds, there's still a pretty big gap. Come in quite a bit, but you could still pick up more than 200 basis points going into U.S. debt on a non-currency adjusted basis. The caveat should be noted. Coming up, we're going to be talking more about the market in particular, about how to view the coronavirus and the threat, the sort of bleed through into the global economy with a whole host of potential outcomes. Very unclear what's actually on the ground there. We're also going to be speaking about logistics and transportation in an e-commerce world. I'm Lisa Abramowitz, along with Paul Sweeney on this Valentine's Day. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks are fluctuating in trading. Investors still trying to gauge the effect of the coronavirus outbreak on the economy. Meantime, retail sales rose in January for a fourth straight month as cheaper prices at the pump encouraged spending on other goods. The value of overall sales climbed 0.3%. However, the prior month's gain was revised lower, and that's weighing on stocks. Roku's fourth quarter results beat expectations, sending shares jumping. The video streaming platform had a surge in active accounts thanks to new services like Disney+. Universal Music planning to go public by early 2023. The company raking in money from the surging popularity of music streaming. And surprisingly, Valentine's Day is not especially a good day for most restaurants. The holiday ranked 94th for the year in total sales. That's according to software company Womply. The number one day of the year? That's a Saturday before Mother's Day. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Right now, Doctors Without Borders medical teams are operating in some of the most remote and dangerous corners of the world. When front yards become front lines, at the crossroads of conflict and epidemic, where there are no hospitals, that's where we operate. Your response is critical to our response in places where few others will go. That's where we operate. Learn more at doctorswithoutborders.org.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
For up to 50% off selected floors and beds, and up to an additional £250 off your total flooring order. Carpet Right for life. Terms and conditions apply.
Finding your perfect new home can be tough. So if you keep missing out,
It's time to search at On the Market.
There are thousands of new properties to buy or rent every month at onthemarket.com. 24 hours or more before they're on Rightmove or Zoopla.
On the Market.
See them first. Set up a property alert today.
Search onthemarket.com to find your perfect home.
If you're in the market, search onthemarket.com. See onthemarket.com/new and exclusive. Agents specify exclusivity.
This is our story. The Birds of Prey. Yeah. Roman is building an army. He's after all of us. We gotta clean the city from the inside out.
Critics are saying Margot Robbie is brilliant as Harley Quinn.
Hi, boys.
A fantastic assault on the senses. An irresistible riot of popcorn fun. Brilliantly acted and very funny. 4 stars. Birds of Prey. In cinemas now. Certificate 15.
Vision Express understands we're inspired by what we see. Right now, with every pair of glasses, you'll get varifocal lenses half price, plus our 60-day total satisfaction guarantee. Book your eye test online today. Vision Express. Vision taken seriously. Terms and conditions apply. See in store for details.
Vodafone 5G will have the power to change your world. From driverless cars to virtual reality and real-time gaming. That's why we're rolling out 5G across the UK. Discover Vodafone 5G on the UK's best mobile data network. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
NPerf testing awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance based on 35,664 tests on the NPerf app in the UK. Coverage may vary. Visit vodafone.co.uk.
WW Weight Watchers Reimagined have a new customised weight loss programme, MyWW, where no foods are off limit. Just fill out a simple assessment and get matched to a plan that suits you. You love eating carbs, cooking at home or eating out? No problem with this new customised plan. Discover which new MyWW plan can make losing weight easier for you. Join now and get 50% off your first 3 months.
Offer ends 8th of February. Subscription fees and conditions apply. Mainland UK only. See website for details.
The UK has now left the EU, and we are in a transition period until the end of the year. Throughout this period, the government will be forging new partnerships with the EU and the rest of the world. This could lead to new arrangements for trade, travel, and business. To find out about the changes and how they might affect you, go to gov.uk/transition.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, we'll drive the conversation forward on markets, finance, and securities. We're going to chat with our good friend Carl Riccadonna, Chief U.S. Economist for Bloomberg Economics, get his thoughts on global economic growth amid the coronavirus. First, let's go to John Tucker of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. John.
All right, Paul. S&P 500, the Dow barely moving today. Worries over economic hit from the coronavirus outbreak still keeping investors making any big bets ahead of the long holiday weekend. Meantime, we have gains in NVIDIA. Those shares keeping the Nasdaq in positive territory this morning. S&P 500 right now up 4 points. We're at 33.78. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 8 points. We're at 29,414. And the Nasdaq Composite Index is 24 points higher. That's up 0.25%. We're at 97.36. Citigroup's global chief investment strategist Steve Whiting says the run-up in U.S. assets, as far as he's concerned, is pretty well anchored at this point.
While the U.S. is getting safe haven inflows from the rest of the world, you can take a look at both bonds and stocks in the United States. You can take a look at the U.S. dollar as evidence of that. This is an unlikely time for U.S. outperformance really to wane while these concerns are more centered in the rest of the world.
Wall Street is on course for a second straight weekly gain. And as far as earnings season in the S&P 500, 389 companies of the 500 have reported earnings so far. And of those, we have about 76% reporting positive earnings surprises. Treasuries today, the 10-year, the yield is down 3 basis points. We're at 158. There is a bid to Treasuries up 8/32 in price. And crude oil is higher. Brent and NYMEX crude both up over 1%. We check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker. And that is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
When we talk about the melt up or the skyrocket up, if you take a look at a longer time series of the U.S. equity market, really dive in. It is about the rally in a select group of shares, the FANG shares, the big fan mag, actually, because we're going to be speaking about one of them. Apple and Microsoft combined account for more than 10% of the S&P's value, which raises even more scrutiny of these companies because they are becoming systemically important in a way that few others have in history. Joining us now, Anurag Rana, Senior IT and Software Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. I want to drill into Microsoft in particular. A couple of interesting developments when it comes to their cloud development. Can you give us a sense of what the latest is there in the broader context of the import of this company within the sphere of the U.S. equity markets?
Yeah, absolutely. See, cloud's been talked about for a very long period of time, but when you look at the infrastructure piece of it, Amazon had the lead and had lead for years for just because of the early entrant being the first person in the market. Microsoft has done a phenomenal job over the last 6-7 years to scale that business up. It became the first and the most important part of Satya when he came in, close to 6 years ago now. And he has done a lot of good work in terms of working with the rivals, making Microsoft more open to open source software. And now their cloud portfolio is second to Amazon and a very close second. It's not a question of before the gap was very wide. Now, if you are looking to move any of your applications to the cloud, you can choose one or the other. It's not a slam dunk that it has to go to Amazon. And the most recent win or the big, controversial contract is just around that. But, Microsoft is in a great position today.
So give us the latest. I saw some news out, I guess, yesterday. A federal judge temporarily blocked Microsoft from working on a $10 billion Pentagon cloud computing contract after Amazon, I guess, asked for a delay. So give us a sense of how material that is and what's the story.
It's more philosophical about that, the second player beat the first player kind of argument, because financially, with the amount of money Microsoft generates per year, $1 billion per year is not, financially that moving, but philosophically it's a very important thing. We go back a few years when Amazon beat IBM to a similar CIA contract. It was all up in there that Amazon's now up in front running when it comes to IT infrastructure. And, this is similar. There's a lot of politics involved in it because of Jeff Bezos and the president. So, there is a lot of argument over there, but our take is, both companies will do really good in cloud. They have really good products, and the market's large enough for both of them to be there.
So taking a step back, there's sort of an existential question when it comes to the U.S. equity market about how much further tech giants can go when it comes to their share prices rallying. They've led the charge globally, and I'm wondering, when you surveil the landscape of the tech giants, are there any clouds? Are there really any kind of, harbingers of another time that's less auspicious for these? Or do you feel like it's just going to keep on going?
That's a very difficult question, because a lot
that's
of...
Right.
That's
existential. I preface it that way.
See, a lot depends on the macro view. If the global economy slows down, nothing is sacred at that point. Tech spending, cloud being, a growth area, yes. But the degree or the rate of growth will actually slow down for all products. So if you look at it, our philosophy, going into 2020, our thesis was we should see a slowdown in some of the, even the high growth areas. But it hasn't happened so far. Now, whether it gets pushed off in the middle of the year, the elections does it, if the virus, there are so many macro factors out there, from, weakness in Europe, weakness in Germany.
So I take this as a no.
No, it's difficult to say because the rate of growth is still holding up. And that's actually pretty impressive given where we are in the economic cycle.
All right, so Microsoft, stock's up 75% over the past 12 months. Is it just the cloud? What's the story here?
It is just the cloud, but actually it's the funny part is, for Microsoft, it's not just the public cloud. It's actually what they call the hybrid cloud strategy, because what's happening is we wrote a piece called Cloud 2.0 when it talks about that the next phase of cloud growth is not going to come from the Netflixes of the world. It's going to come from the Disneys of the world that are moving their entire business to a digital platform. So they are the ones who are upgrading it. And guess what? Microsoft has a dominant position in the legacy IT infrastructure. So when people move that, they buy both their on-premise software and they buy their cloud program. So they're actually having what I would call is the best of both worlds.
Interesting. Stock's been, Satya Nadella is, he's been there 6 years. He's kind of an unsung, maybe just in my mind, an unsung star of Silicon Valley. You think about, the Bezos of the world.
He's being sung enough right now. He's being sung more. No, you think not?
I don't know. I still haven't come across a CEO going back to even, the days of IBM's turnaround or Lee Iacocca. I think he's done better than any one of them, because he has changed the philosophy of the company. He has changed the mindset of the company from who cared about Microsoft 7-8 years ago, and now the biggest player in software is growing faster than the software industry. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's
Paul,
pretty good.
Anurag's Valentine is Satya Nadella.
Yes, exactly. Anurag Rana covers all things technology for Bloomberg Intelligence. We appreciate him coming in here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, giving us his thoughts on Microsoft. Again, the stock is up 75% over the past 12 months. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. for Ward and National Headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan.
Paul, the U.S. has reportedly reached a truce agreement with the Taliban. It will take effect very soon and could lead to U.S. troop withdrawals from Afghanistan. This comes after Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Defense Secretary Mark Esper met on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference with Afghan President Ashraf Ghani. A senior U.S. official tells the Associated Press the deal would call for a 7-day reduction in violence, followed by the start of all Afghan peace talks within 10 days. President Trump is tweeting about the Justice Department again, a day after Attorney General William Barr urged him not to in an interview with ABC News. Barr said the president's comments about cases that come before his Justice Department make it impossible to do his job. At the same time,
I'm happy to say that, in fact, the president has never asked me to do anything in a criminal case.
And this morning, the president reiterated that on Twitter, though he added he has the legal right to talk to his attorney general about criminal cases. So far, though, the president says he's chosen not to. Heading into next week's Nevada caucuses, the latest morning consult poll puts Bernie Sanders atop the Democratic presidential race with 29% national support. Joe Biden comes in second at 19%, followed by Michael Bloomberg at 18%. Sanders tells CBS this morning the Democratic Party shouldn't have changed its debate rules.
Some very good friends of mine who are competing in the Democratic nomination, people like Cory Booker of New Jersey, Senator, Julianne Castro, work really, really hard. Nobody changed the rules to get them into the debate. But I guess if you're worth $60 billion, you can change the rules.
We should know Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg Radio parent company Bloomberg LP. Global news on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients, and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL Scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
This is our story. The Birds of Prey. Roman is building an army. He's after all of us. We gotta clean the city from the inside out.
Critics are saying Margot Robbie is brilliant as Harley Quinn.
Hi, boys.
A fantastic assault on the senses. An irresistible riot of popcorn fun. Brilliantly acted and very funny. 4 stars. Birds of Prey. In cinemas now. Certificate 15.
TSB's Fix and Flex loan offers one of the best rates you can get. 2.9% APR representative fixed for up to 5 years. And the freedom to pay more whenever you want. Or even take a break if you like. Because no one can really predict what the future holds. On loans from £7,500 to £25,000. Subject to status, UK residents only, over 21. Based on de facto data January 2020. Up to 2 repayment holidays a year subject to approval.
The B&Q 3-for-2 paint offer is now on. Get an unmissable 3-for-2 on coloured emulsions such as Dulux, Farrow & Ball and Valspar. Don't miss out on this show-stopping deal. Get to B&Q. You can do it when you're 3-for-2 it. Excludes white and ready-mix trade. Every third item per single transaction in descending price order free. Offer ends 24th of February. See DIY.com.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
At TUI, we're spreading sunshine early by giving away hundreds of thousands of free kids' places. So you can holiday with the little ones for less. Book today and spread the cost with £0 deposit when you pay with direct debit. From splash parks to swimming lessons. At TUI, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Direct debit on web bookings only. Free kids' places subject to limited availability. One free child place per 2 full paying adults. Booking T's and C's apply. At all protected.
Where are we?
The New Forest.
But I thought we only had the Mini Countryman booked for a test drive. We can't stay here.
We're not going to.
This isn't exactly what I meant.
Relax. With Mini's new 48-hour test drive, you can use the Countryman for exactly what it's built for. Exploring. Plus, it's an SUV, the largest Mini in the range, so you can pack loads more in.
Great. Where next?
Well, you know how you've always wanted to try kayaking?
The Mini Countryman 48-hour test drive. Visit mini.co.uk to book yours. Mini. Who's in? Test drive subject to status and availability. Terms and conditions apply. Participating Mini retailers only.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm John Tucker in the Bloomberg Newsroom with this Bloomberg Business Flash. This on a day when the major averages are headed for weekly gains. Right now, the S&P 500 up about 5 points. That's a rise of 0.2%. We're at 3378. Dow Jones Industrial Average down about 2 points. Right now at 29,420. And the Nasdaq Composite Index is up 26 points. That's up 0.3%. We're at 9738. Measure volatility is lower. The VIX right now is 1396. That is down about 1.3%. Chipmaker NVIDIA and travel giant Expedia, they're jumping. They had strong forecasts today. We also had some economic data. U.S. retail sales rising in January for a fourth straight month, though the prior month's gain, that was revised lower. The consumer sentiment also hit its highest since 2018. We have a bid to treasuries today. The yield on the 10-year is at 158. That is down about 3 basis points. And crude oil is higher. NYMEX crude West Texas up 62 cents a barrel. We're at 42.04. We check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, investors across the globe are trying to figure out the impact of the coronavirus will have on global economic growth. Economists are crunching their numbers. We have our own economist with his own model. Carl Riccadonna, chief U.S. economist for Bloomberg Economics, joins us here in the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. So, Carl, what are you guys at Bloomberg Economics thinking about right here as it relates to the impact from the coronavirus, maybe on obviously Chinese economic growth, but also global GDP?
Absolutely. So as we think about the impact, and I know a lot of people immediately pull out the playbook from SARS in 2003, I don't think that's the best comparison. China had a much smaller role on the global economy at that time, and so I think the SARS comparisons run a little thin. And instead, we can see some better parallels if we look back to the the flooding in Thailand in 2011, or the Fukushima nuclear disaster in Japan, and how those disrupted global supply supply chains. And I think that gives us a more useful way of thinking about what we're seeing as we hear more and more headlines about, especially in the auto sector, production lines being slowed because they are missing parts and whatnot. Just to put some numbers around the forecast, our China team has downgraded their Q1 forecast to about 4.5% growth in China. That compares to a running rate of about 6, high 5 type of territory for China. In terms of the U.S. economy, we have modified our growth numbers to look for more weakness in the first half of the year, but that is not a coronavirus story. That is actually a Boeing production story. The stoppage of production of the 737 MAX actually holds the potential to move top-line economic growth. So there's very few companies that can actually move the needle on GDP growth. Boeing jumbo jets are an expensive item, and so in fact the volatility around production can impact growth, and that's what we're seeing in the first half.
Fascinating. There's a question in the economists who we speak with. They say there's going to be a V-shaped recovery. A lot of people say that any growth lost will be subsequently made up for when people start to go back out and the virus fears subside, or Boeing gets finished with their issues with the 737 MAX. What's your take on the likelihood of a V-shaped recovery?
So if we're talking about Boeing production issues, if they get clearance, ramp up production, and fill a bunch of orders, then absolutely you get that V-shaped production, V-shaped rebound to production. For the virus story, I'm not so sure that's the case, because a lot of spending, especially in service categories, will not be replaced, and so there certainly will be some pent up demand. If you need a new phone or a new automobile and you didn't get to buy it because of transportation networks being shut down and whatnot, you're probably going to go buy it relatively soon. So that demand does get pent up. But if you normally go to the movies 5 times a month, you're not going 10 times next month to make up for the missed time. Same with restaurant meals and a lot of stuff like that. Also, there's an income impact. So if we're shutting down the economy, a lot of people who are maybe earning an hourly wage as opposed to a salary, they're not getting paid, and so they will have less spending power when activity does start to bounce back. Doesn't mean, again, that there's not a little bit of pent-up activity. You have to buy groceries and whatnot, but I think that we're looking at lost income, which will actually lower the level of GDP growth for 2020.
So, Carl, when we think about GDP growth 2020, certainly in the U.S., but certainly around the world as well, we think about the consumer, the strength of the consumer. We had some U.S. retail sales number came out this morning. On the surface, looked pretty good. What did you take from those?
Well, when you say we think about the consumer, we pretty much think only about the consumer, because the core, if not sole engine of economic growth for the last quarter, 4 quarters, 12 quarters, 16 quarters, I could go on, has really been consumer spending. And so as we look at the retail sales numbers today, they're basically consistent with the same type of consumer activity we saw in Q4, which was not great, but it was not terrible either. So it's enough to prop up economic growth in the vicinity of 2% or slightly less. So consumers are holding up, and certainly, to kind of look at the silver lining of all of this, which is kind of a perverse thing to do, with oil prices coming down as much as they did, we're seeing prices at the pump coming down. And so this is giving consumers a little bit of an energy dividend in their spending accounts. And we saw that in things like restaurant and bar sales being quite strong. Often that's a give or take category. If gas becomes more expensive, people eat out or drink less, and vice versa. And so we saw some signs of that in January. The gas price decline is going to be much more evident in February. So watch for those discretionary categories to perk up. Where we would be concerned that things are really falling apart is if you saw consumer sentiment start to pull back, and that is not the case whether you look at equity markets or whether you look at the preliminary reading from University of Michigan that surprised expectations to the upside.
That's exactly
earlier
where
this
we wanted
morning.
to go, right? Coming in at the highest level since 2018. Is this a leading or lagging indicator?
It depends, but it can often be a leading indicator heading into economic downturns. If we look at past recessions, you see consumer sentiment roll over before the downturn actually occurs. Now, this could be for 2 reasons. Maybe households are very intuitive and they can read the trend in the economy before it actually occurs, or maybe the pullback in sentiment actually contributes to enough of a downdraft that it pushes the economy into contraction. Whether it's chicken or egg doesn't really matter, but the important thing is it is a leading indicator of recession, and so you don't see this acceleration going into a downturn. So again, there's lots of negative headlines out there, but we have to remember with unemployment as low as it's been going all the way back to 1969, wage pressure is not great, but there is some upward trajectory there. Wage stagnation is a myth. We're seeing wage growth. Consumer spending should be able to hold in at some base level over the course of this year, which means U.S. recession odds still remain relatively low. I put them in the vicinity of about 15%.
Down from a lot more.
Well, it was temporarily a little bit higher last year, but I was never big into the notion that we were on the cusp of recession for the reasons I just highlighted: low unemployment, wage pressures, and consumer spending power.
Cara Cadana, happy Valentine's Day.
And likewise.
Thank you.
He's sporting the pink shirt today.
He is sporting the pink shirt, the curl in his hair. Lovely. Cara Cadana, Chief U.S. Economist for Bloomberg Economics, joining us here in our Interactive Broker Studios. Really a compelling point here as people sort of fret about the high valuations in equities and bonds for that matter. There really is not a sign that the U.S. economy is going to get severely hit from the coronavirus. Interesting that Boeing production delays is more what's going to hamper first half GDP growth in the United States. Coming up, we've got Bloomberg Balance of Power taking the conversation down to Washington, D.C. Bill Barr, Attorney General, very much in focus after saying that he would like President Trump to not tweet about decisions that the Justice Department has because it makes his job impossible to do. President Trump responding, he has a right to do it, but has not intervened. We will carry the conversation forward. This is Bloomberg.
In addition to Bloomberg Radio, you can catch the latest news and biggest newsmakers on Bloomberg Television. Look for us on DirecTV Channel 353 or check your local listings. That's saying...
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
I'll read Stan. Will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, and try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
The world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From
From Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, I'm David Weston. Welcome to Balance of Power, where the world of politics meets the world of business. On the brief today from Hong Kong, Sophie Cameroudin for the latest on the coronavirus. Michael McKee from Sarasota, Florida on the state of the U.S. consumer. And from London, Jamie Rush on more weak numbers coming out of Germany. So, Sophie, thank you once again for your great reporting in Hong Kong. Give us a sense of where we are. I guess the thing we first ask about is the count, as it were. How many people infected?
Well, the numbers out of China this Friday did offer some inconsistencies, which may intensify scrutiny around that data. Now, we did have China confirming that the big jump that we saw on Thursday in WHO-based numbers, those are a one-off. But today, it did lower the total count, citing a double counting due to the new method, which includes a diagnosis of clinical symptoms. So we did see a drop in the total number of reported cases by 1,000, bringing that tally to just nearly 64,000, while the fatality toll stands at 1,380 after 108 cases were removed from that tally. And of these reported cases, medical staff certainly being affected. More than 1,700 have been infected with the virus as of 11. This as hospitals are grappling to treat the outbreak with short supplies. And in Beijing, we're seeing local media reporting that people returning to the city have been instructed to go on home quarantine for 14 days in order to be observed.
Wow.
David.
So this is first and foremost, of course, a human tragedy. We don't want to lose sight of that. At the same time, there are economic repercussions. Do we have any sense, for example, we saw a Fiat plant have to get shut down. What is the supply chain consequences here?
Yeah, so the Fiat Chrysler decision to halt operations at a Serbian assembly plant, that's due to the shortage of parts from China. Just another example of the knock-on effect on the global supply chain. This follows on the likes of Renault and GM also seeing the operations being affected, for example, in Korea. And we're seeing a slow restart of manufacturing on the mainland. We're seeing power demand, for example, not picking up as was hoped for after the government called on companies to quicken the pace of reopening at their plants. And so we do have that very much in focus, David.
Okay, Sophie, I really appreciate all your reporting from Hong Kong. That's Sophie Cameroudin, our colleague over there in Hong Kong. And now we turn to Michael McKee in Sarasota, Florida. So, Mike, we got a fair amount of consumer numbers, retail sales numbers, consumer confidence numbers. I guess they were mainly positive, but some mixed results.
Definitely mixed results, David. You know, years ago, Alan Greenspan was asked about this, and he said, we watch what consumers do, not what they say. If that's still the case, then there is reason for concern, because the retail sales numbers for January were a disappointment. The headline number up 0.3, that was as expected, but the December number was revised down by 0.1 to a 0.2 gain. And the retail control group, which eliminates gasoline, home supplies, and food and building material supplies, that number goes directly into GDP, and that was a real disappointment, unchanged on the month, and the December number revised down from a 0.5% gain to a 0.2% gain. So consumers may still be buying, but their enthusiasm would seem to have flagged a little bit, except for the fact that we got those University of Michigan consumer sentiment numbers, a new high. Now people are telling the University of Michigan survey that they still feel good about the economy and its prospects. Which will win out? That's going to be the question going forward. At the same time, we did see some disappointing manufacturing numbers. Boeing and the global slowdown hurting contraction in manufacturing again. So the economy about where it was before we got into this new year, David, with manufacturing weak and consumers still spending. The only question is, do consumers start to slow down? Is the expansion getting tired?
So go back to Chairman Greenspan for a second. In your experience, does the actual performance trail the optimism? Because as you say, University of Michigan was close to a cycle high, actually. Would that indicate maybe better times are ahead?
One would hope so, but research has shown that there isn't a close correlation between the consumer sentiment numbers and the spending numbers. What we have to see, though, is spending overall, because the retail sales numbers only measure things we buy, with the exception of the fact that it does show retail eating and drinking. But experiences and services, those don't show up in those numbers. Those have been relatively strong. We'll get those at the end of the month, and that'll be what the Fed is really looking at.
Okay, Mike, thanks very very much. That's Mike McKee reporting from Florida. We're going to be back with Mike later this hour for an interview with Cleveland Fed President Loretta Mester. Now to Jamie Rush of Bloomberg Economics joining us from London. Let's talk about those German numbers. Those were not very encouraging today, Jamie.
No, they weren't encouraging at all. So the German economy failed to expand whatsoever in the fourth quarter. And that follows, of course, pretty bad year overall for Germany, especially in the manufacturing sector. What's interesting is that the weakness was concentrated both within the manufacturing sector and in a particular month, right at the end of the year in December. So we saw this huge fall in industrial production. It was the biggest since the financial crisis. But the interesting thing there is that it was actually spread across countries in the whole euro area. So this isn't just a Germany story. It's not just an idiosyncrasy. We see it in other countries as well. So I think the thing to take away from it is that the risks are clearly still skewed to the downside for the euro area and for Germany, and growth is likely to potentially be quite slow in the first quarter as well.
So, Jamie, as you say, risks skewed to the downside. We have a risk almost turning into a certainty, which is supply disruptions that may well be affecting Germany and other places in Europe in the manufacturing sector, specifically from the coronavirus. How vulnerable is the economy over there to that sort of shock?
Well, we're going to see two types of shock. The first is that there's just going to be weaker demand from China for exports in the rest of the world. That's the channel through which Germany is particularly exposed. On the supply disruption, actually, because Germany's supply networks are kind of spread around Europe, it's not the most exposed economy in Europe. And so it's actually kind of spread quite widely around the EU. What we do say, though, is that it's very hard to gauge the impacts because even though the exposure looks small, it only takes the absence of one part to shutter an entire production line.
Okay, Jamie, thank you so much for your reporting. That's Jamie Rush of Bloomberg Economics over in London. And now, this is when we get a check on how the markets are reacting to today's top stories. Joining us now is Kaylee Line. So looking at the equity markets, I'm not sure they are reacting because I'm not sure where they're going.
We're pretty much flat. They're not really going a lot anywhere. The Dow is down by 0.1%, the S&P higher by about that much. So really muted moves because there's a lot of factors at play here. Of course, you have the consistent overhang of the coronavirus, the potential implications that could have on growth. You also had some retail sales numbers out today that weren't terrible, but they weren't all that inspiring for risk appetite, and corporate earnings that maybe are looking a little bit better. So as far as where that leaves you, well, equities may be higher just marginally, but you're also seeing buying in bonds, for example. You're still seeing that flight to safety. Yields are down by about 4 basis points.
And I wonder about the bond market specifically, because it looks like maybe people are saying for the coronavirus, the one thing that's a good idea is to buy some bonds, because that's been fairly consistent now.
Yeah, I mean, you see yields move lower by nearly 40 basis points so far in 2020. The one thing I will say is that U.S. equities in particular are looking a lot safer, too. When you look at what has outperformed within the equity market this year, it's tech, which, of course, is growth, but also the defensives, utilities, and real estate, the second and third best performers this year, because, of course, they've been benefiting from those lower yields. But now those defensive and growth sectors have a 70% weighting within the S&P 500, which is the highest since all the way back in the 1920s. So the equity market is tilting much more so safety, which is why you may be seeing both stocks and bonds gain at the same time.
Fascinating. Thank you so much to Kayla Lines for that report on the markets. And now we turn to Mark Crumpton for Bloomberg First Word News.
David, health experts say confusion and mistrust between the United States and China could hamper efforts to keep the outbreak from growing. The U.S. says China won't let its health workers help fight the virus. Beijing says they're welcome to come. The World Health Organization says nothing has been decided. The coronavirus has infected more than 64,000 people globally. Defense officials are standing behind their decision to divert nearly $4 billion in funding for military aircraft and other programs to help pay for a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border. Some in Congress said the move was illegal. Defense Secretary Mark Esper said today, quoting here, "Border security is national security, and national security is our mission," end quote. The Pentagon also indicated that more money may be moved to pay for the wall. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is backing President Trump's assessment of the threat posed by American allies doing business with Huawei. Speaking at an international security conference in Munich today, Speaker Pelosi warned European allies to steer clear of the Chinese tech giant as they build their next-generation cellular networks. She added doing business with Huawei would embolden Chinese President Xi Jinping as he, quote, undermines democratic values, human rights, economic independence, and national security, end quote. The European Union is asking member states to enforce the United Nations arms embargo against Libya. World powers agreed at a conference in Berlin last month to respect the embargo, but weapons have continued to flow to the two warring factions in Libya. Since the 2011 ouster and subsequent death of dictator Muammar Gaddafi, Libya has sunk further into chaos and turmoil. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks very much, Mark. Coming up, Democrats head to Nevada and a very different collection of voters. We talk with our political panel next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
Tom Keene and Jonathan.
For up to 50% off selected floors and beds. For first-class fitting. For kicking your heels off. For overexcited kids. And pets. For thrills and spills. For a special welcome home. For up to an additional £250 off your total flooring order. Carpet Right for life. Terms and conditions apply.
A half-price dream holiday, wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free, wouldn't want to miss that. And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the Uswitch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm John Tucker in the Bloomberg Newsroom with this Bloomberg Business Flash. Stocks edging higher, steady if uninspiring figures for retail sales helping give them a lift. Investors also assessing data from China on how the coronavirus is spreading. We also have a bid to treasuries today. The S&P 500 clinging to a small gain today, up less than a point. You have chipmaker NVIDIA and travel giant Expedia jumping after strong forecasts. U.S. retail sales rose for the month of January for a fourth straight month, but the prior month's gain that was revised lower. And consumer sentiment hit its highest since 2018. Healthcare and energy sectors looks like they're slipping right now. Once again, the S&P 500 up less than a point. We're 3374. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 36 points. That's down a tenth at 29,389. And the Nasdaq Composite Index 10 points higher at 9722. We check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. The Democratic primary is moving on to Nevada, actually where it's a caucus, with the state's caucuses coming up a week from tomorrow. One important constituency there is the powerful Culinary Union, which represents 60,000 workers in the state's hospitality industry. It is taking a pass on making any endorsements. That's after it raised concerns about Senator Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All plan. Welcome now our political panel, Matt Bennett, Senior Vice President of Third Way, coming to us from Washington today. And here in New York is Jen Kearns, founder of Women for a Great America. So welcome to both of you. Matt, first of all, give us a sense of how different Nevada is in its composition from either New Hampshire or Iowa. Let's be frank, those are both pretty homogeneous Caucasian states.
They sure are. Iowa's Democratic electorate is 95% white, only to be outdone by New Hampshire, which is 96% white. So they really don't look anything like America. They don't even look like Democrats in America. So now we're finally moving to a state that does. Actually, the New Hampshire Democratic electorate breaks down demographically almost exactly the way the rest of the country does. And so you're going to hear from Latinos, you're going to hear from African Americans and Asian Americans, and a whole range of voters that just haven't been heard from at all since this really began.
So, Jen, specifically with respect to Nevada, there's a lot of emphasis on Latinos or Hispanics, because that Culinary Union I referred to, I think, has a very substantial representation there. What is the challenge for the Republicans, for Donald Trump, with respect to Hispanics these times? He hasn't done so well with them in the past.
He hasn't, but he's making inroads on that. We see his numbers coming up with minorities, specifically African Americans. You know, Trump was elected with just 8% of the African-American vote. That went to 18% after his first year and went to 34% just a week or two ago in the Gallup polls. So he's making inroads there. This is interesting. I think this is where the rubber is going to start meeting the road in terms of the Democratic caucuses. You have 30% Hispanic population in Nevada, which is going to be interesting. It tends to look more like the Democratic Party writ large. It also looks more like America does today. Nevada also has the 5th largest foreign-born population, meaning folks who weren't born here but now live in the state of Nevada. But it's not all advantage to the Democrats. You have a lot of people in my former state of California that moved across the state line to Nevada for the tax relief. They also grew very tired of Democrat policies in California. So there is a clear swath of population there that's tired of those Democrat overreaches.
So, man, it may look a lot more like America or like the Democratic Party. Does it look a lot more like a state that Joe Biden could actually win? Because he needs to win something someplace, doesn't he?
He does. If he's going to be viable after February, he better do well. I don't know that he has to win in Nevada, but he certainly has to place in the top 2 or 3, and that third would be rough. And then he definitely has to win South Carolina, which is a week later, and the Democratic electorate is 60% African American. That has been his strong suit all along. Just a month ago or so, Biden was leading both states by large margins, and in South Carolina, he looked untouchable. He was up by 35 points. If he doesn't do well there, I think it's going to be very difficult for him to go on.
Jen, one of the stories coming out of New Hampshire was about somebody not on the ballot. The man who created and has a majority interest in Bloomberg LP, our parent company, Michael Bloomberg.
Yeah.
A lot of people are talking about Michael Bloomberg now. Does he have an opportunity to come forward?
He does, absolutely. And he, I think, made the smart strategy to stay out of the early caucus states. We saw what a great decision that was in Iowa, where you had the caucus meltdown. And Mike Bloomberg's Super Tuesday strategy looks very smart now. And also his TV ad buy, I think, is very strong. You look at upcoming states, state of Florida, the St. Pete's poll in the state of Florida has Michael Bloomberg at 27%. Let me tell you how significant that is. The last poll of the Democratic field, Joe Biden was ahead, but Joe Biden even was only 15%. Mike Bloomberg has now doubled that nearly in the state of Florida. Very significant development there.
And I won't ask you to speak for the entire Democratic Party, but you do have a perspective on it. Is Mike Bloomberg a force for good or not so good as far as the Democratic Party is concerned?
I think there's no question that he's a force for good, and I say that not just because I'm sitting here in his building, but because he has pledged, no matter what the outcome of the primaries, to put a lot of money behind the Democratic nominee, whether it's him or someone else. And I don't know whether he's planning to spend the exact same amount on another candidate versus what he'd spend on himself, but it's going to be substantial. He has so much money that he can instantly even the playing field with the Trump campaign and the RNC, which is outraised Democrats, and that is going to be a significant force for good.
Yeah, it's interesting. Bloomberg's presence in this cannot be understated. Whether he becomes the nominee or he puts money into these down ticket races, you look at Congressional District 5 in Oklahoma, which he helped flip a seat blue in the reddest state where every county went to Donald Trump in 2016. That was remarkable. Her seat. They're going to need Mike Bloomberg's money. With Biden failing and with Sanders also not performing as well as predicted, they're going to need Bloomberg's money. Seats like the DCCC's seat out in the 25th Congressional District in California, the former Katie Hill seat, is now within 4 points. You would not have seen that a few months ago. They're going to need Mike Bloomberg, whether it's the top of the ticket or infusing that cash down ticket. But I think Bloomberg is the best bet to take on Trump, and here's why. Mike Bloomberg has a great record in New York City. He could prove that he can deliver some of the same economic results that President Trump has, but he could do it without the antagonizing tweets and a lot of the drama and the angst that take up most of our days. If he could do that's the secret path, I think, for Mike Bloomberg to take on Trump, to show he can do the same things Trump's doing, but without all the drama and the chaos. That's, I think, his winning recipe.
Okay, thank you so very much. To Matt Bennett in Washington and Jen Kearns right here with me in New York. Now we have some breaking news. Andrew McCabe case has apparently closed. There's a red headline crossing the Bloomberg right now. DOJ, Department of Justice, has closed the Andrew McCabe case without charges, his lawyers say. This is according to his lawyers. Remember the investigation of the former FBI agent. and that it will not sit well with the President of the United States. But there's an interesting sort of kerfuffle going on between the Attorney General and the President of the United States right now. We're going to talk about that later on. But we're going to also hear later on from Cleveland Fed President Loretta Mester in an exclusive interview. Her thoughts on the strength of the U.S. economy and some of the latest economic numbers. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
Why do Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
For up to 50% off selected floors and beds, and up to an additional £250 off your total flooring order. Carpet Right for life. Terms and conditions apply.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Finding your perfect new home can be tough. So if you keep missing out,
it's time to search at On the Market.
There are thousands of new properties to buy or rent every month at onthemarket.com. 24 hours or more before they're on Rightmove or Zoopla.
On the Market.
See them first. Set up a property alert today.
Search onthemarket.com to find your perfect home.
If you're in the market, search onthemarket.com. See onthemarket.com/new and exclusive. Agents specify exclusivity.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. Attorney General William Barr went on ABC last evening to say he already intended to reduce the sentence recommendation for Roger Stone, but the president's going public with his condemnation was making the AG's job, according to him, impossible. This morning, the president responded using the very Twitter Mr. Barr was asking him to avoid, quoting the Attorney General, saying Mr. Trump had never asked him to do anything in a criminal case, but, quote, that doesn't mean that I do not have, as president, the legal right to do so. I do, but I have so far chosen not to. Welcome now my colleague, June Grasso. She's host of Bloomberg Law. So, is the president right? He does have the legal right to tell his Attorney General what to do.
Well, he does, and Richard Nixon had the right to fire Archibald Cox, and Elliot Richardson said, no, I'm not going to do it. We led to the Saturday Night Massacre, which led to a sort of evolution of the Justice Department as being more independent than a lot of other parts of the executive branch. So the question isn't whether he had the right to do it. The question is whether he should have done it. And the problem here is that the independence of the judiciary, I'm used to saying independence of judiciary, the independence of the Justice Department is being questioned from within and without, and that's a real problem.
We're not that far away from the independence of the judiciary, because Mr. Barr, in saying why he was disagreeing with the president, he said, look, I have prosecutors who work for me who have to believe I'm making decisions on merits. I have judges we have to appear before, who have to believe that we're doing this for non-political reasons because we think it's the right thing.
And very unusual thing happened. The head judge of the D.C. District Court, which is the court where Stone is going to be sentenced, he made a statement yesterday talking about sentencing and how judges are not going to be influenced by politics or pressure. That's really unusual. And when you look at what happened in this case and what Barr said, it seems like something is missing in the calculation, because what happened here was you had 4 line prosecutors make the recommendation. They got the advice and consent and approval of the D.C. U.S. Attorney.
Which is the way it's done.
Which is the way it's done, and that would normally be enough. In a high-profile case, you may have more. And the D.C. U.S. Attorney talked to Barr. Barr admitted he talked to him on Monday. The papers were filed Monday afternoon, the original sentencing recommendation. Tuesday at 2 a.m., Trump tweets his disapproval, and then Tuesday afternoon, all of a sudden, they take it back and reverse. So it doesn't make much sense.
And the Attorney General says, well, no, he saw it before, and he was always going to do that. How many times has he actually overruled a recommendation that's been made by his prosecutors? How many times has that ever happened?
I haven't seen that happen, and there's been no instance that I've heard reported, but also, and this is not being mentioned much, but very quietly a few weeks ago, Michael Flynn, the National Security Advisor formerly to President Trump, his sentencing recommendation was also reversed by the Justice Department. So they went from 6 months in prison to probation. That happened too. So a lot is going on below the surface.
That is a great catch. I missed that. Okay, many thanks to June Grasso. You want to catch her on Bloomberg Law. That airs on Bloomberg Radio weekdays at 10 p.m. and at 7 a.m. and then again at 5 p.m. on Saturdays. It's time now for our stock of the hour. AIG is dropping by about 3% today, despite pulling off an underwriting profit for its property and casualty operations in 2019. Kaylee Lyons is here with more. So explain AIG. This has been in and out of the news.
Well, they've been in trouble for many years.
Exactly.
And this was a key part of the CEO's turnaround plan, was returning this P&C business to profit. Their combined ratio now 99.6. Essentially what that means is that for every dollar paid in on premiums, they're only paying out 99.6 cents, which is a drastic improvement considering in 2018 they were paying out 111. Where the problem runs into is in the fact that we think about AIG and an insurer, but the bulk of its business is really in retirement plans. And in this low rate environment, that annuities business is in a little bit of trouble. And so that's going to be an issue going forward for them in 2020, especially considering we had Fed Chair Jerome Powell testifying on the Hill this week saying low rates are not going anywhere anytime soon. So that's going to be an issue and a business to watch for AIG going forward.
Rates for those low interest rates come back and bite you. At least you're in the annuity business. Okay, thank you so much to Kaylee Lyons for that report on AIG. Coming up next here, we're going to get the views of Henrietta Trey's Aveda partners on what the coronavirus could mean for the U.S.-China trade deal. That is, after all, on the day, Valentine's Day, the Phase 1 goes into effect. That's coming up. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
This is the Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. stocks are edging higher on positive consumer data. The University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index is at its highest level in almost 2 years on brighter views of finances and the economy. Consumers went shopping last month. The government reports retail sales were up a solid 0.3%. Universal Music is planning to go public by early 2023. The company is raking in money from the surging popularity of music streaming. And it's Valentine's Day, and the National Retail Federation forecasts Americans will shell out nearly $200 today on chocolates, flowers, and dinner. On Wall Street, U.S. stocks are mixed. The Dow is down 29 points, S&P up 3, the Nasdaq climbing 19 points. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Leaders are born.
What does it take to get the markets back on the rails?
Born leaders are here.
The timeline for that can be slow.
Karen Moscow.
Several nations are negotiating to evacuate diplomats.
And Nathan Hager.
How are you advising clients to navigate the shifting headlines?
Bloomberg Daybreak, weekday mornings at 5 Eastern.
Are we heading into correction territory, do you think?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
From New York, this is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. For Bloomberg First Word News, we go now to Mark Crumpton.
David, President Trump maintains he has the legal right to intervene in criminal cases, but so far he says he hasn't done so. That was in response to Attorney General William Barr's criticism. Barr said the president's tweeting about Justice Department cases has made his job impossible. Barr made his comments in an interview with ABC News. Bernie Sanders' status as the Democratic presidential frontrunner is causing some jitters in Congress. Some Democrats are concerned that their House majority and chances of taking the Senate could be at risk. They blame Sanders' embrace of what he calls democratic socialism. There are fears that could turn off moderates that some Democratic candidates need to be reelected. In Hong Kong, Chief Executive Carrie Lam says the city has not seen widespread infection from the coronavirus. Still, she says more than 3,500 people there are subject to mandatory quarantine. HSBC revealed that an employee in Hong Kong is one of them. The bank's urging workers who came in contact with the person to stay home for 14 days. The United States and the Taliban have reached a truce. A senior U.S. official says the deal will take effect very soon and could lead to withdrawal of American troops from Afghanistan. The developments come as Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Defense Secretary Mark Esper met today in Munich with Afghanistan's President Ashraf Ghani. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks so much, Mark. Today is the day when Phase 1 of the U.S.-China trade deal goes into effect. But conditions on the ground in China look very different from where we were when the deal was signed at the White House. Here to give us a sense of what the coronavirus could do to trade relations is Henrietta Trey's, Veda Partners Managing Director of Economics. She's coming to us today from New Orleans. So, Henrietta, thank you so much for joining us. There were some who doubted whether China could deliver on what they promised even before the coronavirus. What does the virus do?
Yeah, thanks for having me. As you mentioned, what we've been hearing from some Republicans in leadership and those close with them is that the Republican caucus, which, as you know, is very exposed to the heartland and all the farm states, we've been stressing Iowa and North Carolina in particular, are very concerned about the Chinese ability to purchase enough pork the way they said they would back in December when the Phase 1 deal was originally reached, the way that they can purchase energy exports, soy, poultry, et cetera. And the real push, the squeeze is on from Senate Republicans straight to the administration. And what we're saying to the administration is, hey, we understand that the coronavirus is outside of our control. It's obviously a new development. There are clauses in the Phase 1 deal to allow for that. But we're not confident that the numbers you're giving us about coronavirus are consistent or appropriate or not artificially inflated because you fear that we overpromised and are going to underdeliver now on the commodities purchase agreement and other manufacturing agreements. So the skepticism on Capitol Hill is probably one of the biggest problems I would point to for the administration right now, largely because of the coronavirus, but also because the original promises in the Phase 1 deal announced seem to be too high.
Yeah, I must say, just my own personal reaction, it's a little bit far-fetched to think that China is inflating the numbers so they can get out of a Phase 1 trade deal. They've got bigger problems over there. At the same time, talk about the language in the agreement. I guess it's sort of like a force majeure if there's some act of God or some act that the Chinese can't overcome that they get an out.
Right, and just to be clear, I meant the administration. The U.S. administration was inflating numbers or overhyping the coronavirus versus what China had been telling people. Obviously, the people in China are dealing with it to the best of their capabilities, so I didn't mean to have a miscommunication there. But the Phase 1 deal does include a lot of shalls, and we're going to endeavor to reach certain levels and thresholds of purchases. As you know, it doesn't commit or require China to purchase a specific amount of commodities on day one or even even day 5 or 7. It's a year-long commitment with various check-ins throughout the year, some coming up in just a few days, but generally spread around not just the next 12 months, but then also the following 12 months. So the act, the component that says, if there is a natural catastrophe, essentially says we're going to try to live up to this, but to the best of our abilities. But if there's a natural disaster or a national travesty that we have to deal with, we're going to need to reassess. And we'll have to talk about what enforcement mechanisms we'll be using in the event we need that reassessment. As you know, the enforcement mechanism in the Phase 1 deal is more tariffs. So that has driven a lot of the U.S. manufacturers and the supply chains in the United States to question, am I going to file a claim because China is not adhering to any of the components of Phase 1, whether it's purchase commitments or if it's, reforms on the IP side or the forced tech transfer side or other pieces. What is the benefit to U.S. manufacturers and supply chains of going to the U.S. government and the USTR and say, hey, China is not adhering to what it said it was going to do in the Phase 1 deal, because the alternative is enforcements, which swing back around and hit those same manufacturers. So, unfortunately, even though there is that carve out for national security, national disasters, the problem and the output is enforcement mechanisms of tariffs.
So, Henry, it strikes me that over the course of that year where there are commitments, there are two things now. We knew there was one, which is the election in November. The other one is this tragedy, because it is a human tragedy going on in China. I wonder how those might rub up against one another, because as we get further into this year, because clearly the coronavirus isn't going to be solved immediately, it's going to take some period of time. If that puts pressure on U.S. farmers, for example, manufacturing, but for that matter, on the economy overall, what might that cause President Trump to do in relation to trade relations to China to try to bail himself out?
Yeah, it's a huge conundrum for the administration. I think one of the biggest problems we see from the United States Senate right now is the reemergence of China hawks saying, hey, look, we don't know what the exact situation is on the ground. They won't let American officials into Beijing or in to help China. Obviously, China disagrees with that. And there's all sorts of confusion being created. And the China hawks in the United States Senate, whether it's Senator Rubio from Florida, for example, or Tom Cotton from Arkansas, is to discuss all of the issues related to trade, related to coronavirus, related to their form of government, to their cybersecurity, to Huawei, et cetera. You see that on all fronts. So it's exposing a lot of fractures. I think the most clear and present danger for President Trump personally is that he needs the votes in the Rust Belt states and the farm states to stick with him. And the issue for some Senate Republicans like Joni Ernst in Iowa or Tom Tillis in North Carolina is that they need those purchases to be made. So the whole the conflation of all these issues is actually being exacerbated by concerns about cybersecurity, China trade hawks generally, China defense hawks in the United States, and then also this real need to get this all wrapped up by November, before November, to get purchases in.
And a year that we thought we were going to be calmer when it comes to trade. It looks like we're not headed that direction. Okay, Henrietta, thank you so very much to be with us. That's Henrietta Trey. She's Veda Partners Director of Economic Policy and Managing Partner. Coming up next, a conversation with Cleveland Fed President Loretta Mester. She'll join us for an exclusive interview. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
A new day, a new skyline. Who doesn't love a city break in the sun? Markets, museums, and those little cafe moments where you just take it all in. But imagine if you could just stroll from ship to shore into a different city every day. And as dusk falls, your sanctuary awaits at anchor for you to dine, dance, or simply stargaze as you set sail from one shore to discover another. That's a world away. That's the Mediterranean by Cunard. Discover more at cunard.com. APTA and Atoll protected.
At Wix, we'll create your dream kitchen from design to show-off ready and take care of everything. And now, save a third on showroom kitchen units. Book your free design appointment today. Cure your house embarrassment with Wix. For minimum spend, terms and exclusions, see wix.co.uk.
This is our story. The Birds of Prey. Yeah. Roman is building an army. He's after all of us. We gotta clean the city from the inside out.
Critics are saying Margot Robbie is brilliant as Harley Quinn.
Hi, boys.
A fantastic assault on the senses. An irresistible riot of popcorn fun. Brilliantly acted and very funny. 4 stars. Birds of Prey. In cinemas now. Certificate 15.
I am a force for good.
I am a force for courage.
And for calm.
I am a force for safety.
For fairness. For leadership.
I am a force for the future.
For compassion.
For my community.
I am a police officer. And I am a force for all.
Be one of the 20,000 new police officers and be a force for all that you believe in. Search Join the Police.
It might still be cold and dark outside, but at least a new phone can brighten things up. You can get an epic iPhone 8 with a 12-megapixel camera at an epic price. At Tesco Mobile, you can get the iPhone 8 for only $19.99 a month. That's a saving of £90. So go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 23rd of February, saving £2.50 per month over 36 months. What's £22.49? 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status phase. Policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
It's already chilly in London, and you know that dodgy boiler is on its last legs. So if the thought of no heating makes you break out in a cold sweat, talk to British Gas. You can spread the cost of a new boiler interest-free over 2 years and get £200 off when you get a quote by the 29th of February, or £400 off for existing home care customers. British Gas, here to solve. Search British Gas new boiler. Conditions apply.
The B&Q 3-for-2 paint offer is now on. Get an unmissable 3-for-2 on coloured emulsions such as Dulux, Farrow & Ball and Valspar. Don't miss out on this show-stopping deal. Get to B&Q. You can do it when you 3-for-2 it. Excludes white and ready-mix trade. Every third item per single transaction is descending price order free. Offer ends 24th of February. See DIY.com.
One of these days, these boots are gonna walk all over you.
Sign up to Walk All Over Cancer with Cancer Research UK. Walk 10,000 steps every day in March, and together we will beat cancer.
Are you ready, Boots?
Are you ready? It's not long till March.
Start walking.
Use the 10,000 Steps a Day Challenge to explore London, get fit, and help beat cancer. Come on, search Walk All Over Cancer and sign up now.
Do you do the same thing every weekend? You know, meet up with the same friends for brunch, browse around the same shops, eat the same Saturday night takeaway. Mine's a lamb balti with mushroom pilau rice. Snuggle up next to the same person and watch the same brain-numbing reality TV. Then maybe it's time to switch it up. Starting with the all-new Vauxhall Corsa. Bold styling and up to 70 miles per gallon. To switch it up, visit your local Vauxhall dealership or search New Corsa. Official WLTP test figures for comparison purposes only. Real-world figures may vary.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Growth, but right now I'm thinking of that as a risk. You know, I expect that certainly in China and perhaps in Asia, the first quarter numbers are going to be weaker. There could be spillover to the U.S. economy as well in the first quarter, and it remains to be seen by how much and for how long that'll persist. But in general, right, I'm seeing that as a risk to my forecast. I haven't marked down my forecast because of it.
Have your people been able to put any kind of numbers on the risk from the coronavirus?
It's very difficult. I mean, usually the private sector numbers that I've seen are based on what was true with the SARS epidemic. But the world's a lot different than it was in 2003. For one thing, China is a much bigger part of the global economy than it was then. then. On the other hand, China is also a wealthier country than it was then, and they've already taken steps to try to limit the fallout, as have other countries. So it's very hard to make those comparisons at this point. Right now, we're just sort of evaluating number of cases like everyone else is, and then trying to figure out how much impact it'll have on the U.S. economy. Our focus is on the U.S.
You mentioned the manufacturing production contraction that we saw in January. Your district is the heart of manufacturing in this country. What are you hearing from factory owners and workers in your district?
Right. So all in all, the manufacturers in our district are saying they don't see things falling off the cliff at all. They're not worried about recession. On the other hand, they don't think things are necessarily going to pick up a lot. So, it's steady. Orders are coming in, but nothing to write home about, higher or lower. It's just basically steady as she goes.
So the trade deal phase one, not going to make a difference in terms of business investment?
I think it's too early to see. I mean, certainly the good thing about that signing of that deal is that some of the uncertainty around trade has gone down, but it's too early to evaluate whether we're going to see a pickup or how much of a pickup in investment because of the diminution of the uncertainty.
Well, bottom line then, Wall Street is betting that you guys are going to cut rates again this year. Are they out over their skis on that one?
Well, I think as is true whenever we go to FOMC meetings, we evaluate the economic information that we glean from our district contacts and also the data. We look at what financial market signals are telling us as well, and then we make a judgment about where policy is. Right? We've told the last FOMC meeting and the chair's remarks in the press conference is that, we think policy is in a good place. I certainly agree with that. Inflation is low. Labor markets are strong. Right? The economy appears to be growing at around trend of 2%. And that gives us sort of a baseline to sort of watch and look and evaluate, and then we'll determine whether policy needs to move one way or the other going forward.
Do you see anything on the horizon now that would suggest the need for more stimulus?
I think policy's in a good place right now. So again, I think we just have this good period where we can evaluate how things go, and if the outlook changes materially, we'll have to decide whether we need to change policy in reaction to that. But right now, I think the outlook for the economy is still good, notwithstanding the risk that the coronavirus is posing for us.
Do you still believe, as you and your colleagues have said, that inflation is going to hit 2% this year, by your measure, the PCE?
Well, I've said that I think that inflation will be gradually hitting 2%. I think probably not until, the end of this year or into next year. But nonetheless, the early numbers, they'll be up just because some of the weak numbers last year drop out. But to be sustainably at 2%, I think it's going to be a gradual uptick as the expansion continues and labor markets remain strong.
You're in the middle of, farther than the middle perhaps, of the policy framework review. And it seems to be heading in the direction of some sort of inflation averaging, letting inflation run above your target for a while if it's run below. Do you like that idea? And can you pull it off? Can you get inflation up higher than target and let it run for a while?
So the review is ongoing, as you know. The minutes of FOMC meetings have kept people apprised of where we are on the review, and a number of different aspects of the review are being looked at, including the strategy, as you point out, but also the tools that we use when we end up in a low inflation low interest rate environment, and also sort of the communications around. So I don't want to comment on any specific proposal that might be out there, but I do want to say that it's a review that's ongoing. As the chair said, we're aiming to have information sometime by the middle of the year, and what we're trying to do is make sure that our framework, which includes those three aspects, are a good framework for achieving our monetary policy goals in an environment where it looks like the interest rates in the global economy are going to be low for some time.
One of the focuses of this conference has been on digital payment systems. You spoke about that today. One of the big questions on Wall Street is, will the Fed issue its own digital currency?
So as I spoke about today, there are a number of aspects that we need to study before any central bank issues its digital currency. There's some benefits to a potential digital currency, but there are also risks with it, including risks around governance, including risks to financial stability, and including the transmission of monetary policy. So this is an ongoing area of interest at central banks around the world, including the Federal Reserve. But a number of those aspects have to be resolved before any country would want to issue a digital currency. And the U.S., of course, there are certain aspects of our economy, including the strength of the value of the dollar, that make it sort of a different environment than some other countries have.
The New York Fed today, for the second time, announced a shrinking of the number of purchases they're making of Treasury bills in your effort to rebuild the balance sheet. Do you think you're going to be able to get out of it without disrupting the markets? A lot of people have been saying it is, whether you say it or not, it is QE, and that's why the markets keep going up.
Okay, so it's not QE. We're not buying long-term assets as part of this. There was some pressure in the markets in September. It turned out that although reserve levels are high, the distribution of those reserves resulted in some upward pressure on repo rates, and so our target Fed funds rate was trading a little bit outside of the range. So we took action, and we're communicating so that we can explain what we're doing so that it won't be disruptive as we wind those down.
There's a discussion underway on Capitol Hill now about how members are appointed to the Fed board. Judy Shelton, one of the controversial nominees, there's two sides to the issue. One says diversity on the board is very important. Diversity of opinion is very important. And then there's the other side that one senator said, we don't want people with nutty ideas. What do you think about that kind of discussion and argument?
Well, I think the way nominations happen is part of the way the Fed actually garners good people for the board. Obviously, the president's purview is to nominate, and then the Senate confirms. And so that process, I think, has served the institution well, and I expect it to continue to serve the institution well. As a general proposition in terms of making monetary policy, we all come in with our own views based on sort of where we see the economy going, and we glean that from talking to people in our districts, evaluating the data, different models of the economy, and then we come together at that FOMC table with different views, right, to reach a consensus. So that process, I think, has worked very well. And so I think that I would not go beyond that in terms of any specific person, but I think the process has worked well.
Another argument or discussion that's being held on the Hill is what happens, you mentioned this, when you go into the next recession, what tools do you use? And the chairman's talked about QE, he's talked about forward guidance. There's also a question out there about whether you would work in concert with the Treasury Department as they did in the 1950s to try to finance some sort of expansionary fiscal policy. Do you think that's a possibility, or is Fed independence too important to even think about that?
I think independence of the Federal Reserve System is incredibly important. It's served the country well for a long time, and it makes monetary policy actually work in good times and bad times. That said, there is something good when policies are attacking the same problem. So when you think about the Great Recession, right, it wasn't just the Fed, right? It was also the fiscal policy also was trying to get the economy moving again. If that's considered coordination, right, I don't view it that way. I view it as both entities, the fiscal authority and the monetary authority, wanting to work on behalf of the U.S. people to get the economy moving again. So that's not really coordinated policy, but it's policies that are having the same goals. And I think that's the tact I would take.
One last question about what you could use. People are saying, yes, Jay Powell has said we are not going to use negative rates, but Ben Bernanke said never say never. What do you think?
Yeah, so I'm not a fan right now of thinking about negative rates as being useful in the U.S. economy. I think our financial markets are very different than the financial markets in Europe. And so, back in the day when they were thinking about what tools they would use to fight, to get the economy back, it's forward guidance and QE purchases, asset purchases were the tools that they went to. They did seem to work. And so I would have my focus on those two. I don't think negative rates are where I'd go.
All right. Thank you very much, Laura Mester, the president of the Cleveland Federal Reserve. Thank you for joining us. We'll send it back to you.
And thanks very much to our very own Michael McKee. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
If morning is not your favorite part of the day, then maybe you're not listening.
We finally start to make a move.
Tom Keene.
What would you expect from Bezos next?
Jonathan Farrell.
How uncomfortable should central banks be with this situation?
Morning should be good for you.
We had no idea where this would head on that morning after.
Bloomberg Surveillance. Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
When you went car shopping, you meant business. You aced vehicle history searches and test drives. You out-salesmaned the salesman. Now you've got your wheels. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll have the info you need to get more for your future. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to speeding past financial challenges, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients, and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power Award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Tonight on Wall Street Week, we talk with Rock Creek Group CEO Afsane Beshlas about U.S. economic policy and what she wants from whoever wins the election in November.
Policy seems to take a very long time to turn into numbers. So really important to have the right kind of economic policy and not to, for example, slow down the economy at this time, and not to put too much fuel in it either, because either could be very damaging for the markets. The other thing I think that as investors we like to see in the marketplace is more certainty, because risk is something that you can put on probabilities and make a decision on right or wrong. But uncertainty is something that is very damaging to decision making in investment. So that is very much around today.
And so are you better off under President Trump? Your fund, your investments, have you done well under President Trump?
I think there has been a lot of upward movement in the markets that has benefited us just like everybody else. At the same time, I think that is coming to an end. I think moving forward, the next 10 years will not be as easy as the last 10 years for us or for anyone else.
That was Afsane Beshlas, formerly of the World Bank and now CEO of the Rock Creek Group. And you can see the full program on Wall Street Week. The show airs tonight at 6 p.m. Bloomberg on Bloomberg TV and radio. And is available everywhere online. Coming up, Balance of Power continues on Bloomberg Radio. In our second hour, we're going to talk with Maddie Duppler of the National Taxpayers Union. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. Valentine's Day is not as good for restaurants as you might think. Sure, it can be notoriously impossible to book a table at any trendy spot, and Valentine's is nowhere near a money loser, with a 30 to 40% revenue bump over a typical night. But it's no Mother's Day weekend, the most lucrative 2 days of the year for independent restaurants. In fact, according to a study by software company Wombly, Valentine's ranked 94th in the year for consumer spending. Regular Friday and Saturday nights are invariably better for restaurants, and you can thank all the hand-holding, eyes-gazing, champagne-clinking two-tops that linger over their meals for the difference. For a non-meal Valentine's gift, have you considered opal jewelry? Unlike sapphires and other crystalline gems, opal stones are opaque, and it's actually tiny specks of silica that produce the kaleidoscopic, iridescent hues. This makes each gem so unique that every piece of jewelry is one of a kind. Fact high-end designers have taken notice of in this mass-produced world. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
When you put together the puzzle that's today's business and political environment,
Can you make a call given this swirl of data?
Is that already being reflected in the way that they're priced?
make sure you have all the pieces.
Which segments of Alphabet's business are most likely to come under scrutiny?
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction. Will he have to abide by a subpoena?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hey, it's me, your cell phone. We need to talk about something serious. I know you love me. I know you like using me wherever you are, but I feel like this isn't working out when you're driving. I know you may think that it's possible to focus both on me and the road, but I just don't feel the same way. I think we should spend time away from each other when you're driving. It's for the best.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials. So taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. It is a down day now on Wall Street. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, all lower, heading into a long holiday weekend for a lot of people. Equities fluctuating after steady, if uninspiring numbers for retail sales. Also, investors are assessing contrasting data from China on how the coronavirus is spreading. Here's where we stand. S&P lower, little change, down 2 points, down by about 0.1%. The Dow down 73. That is a drop of 0.3%. NASDAQ down 5, a drop there of 0.1%. You heard it here live on Bloomberg Radio and Television, a conversation with Cleveland Fed President Loretta Mester. She touched on a lot of topics, including the economic backdrop.
If you look at the underlying fundamentals for the U.S. economy, they're pretty good, right? The consumer side has been holding up. Yeah, there's volatility in some of the numbers, but all in all, the fundamentals of higher income, household balance sheets look good. The jobs market has been, quite good.
And right now we've got the 10-year up 12.30 seconds. The yield there 1.57%. Gold up 0.5%. 15.83 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.6%. 51.73 a barrel. S&P, as I mentioned, lower, down 0.1%, giving up early session gains. Chipmaker Nvidia and travel giant Expedia jumping after strong forecasts. Nvidia rallying 6.8%. Expedia shares up now by 11.1%. Also after earnings, Roku down now by 4.7%. It is 1:02 on Wall Street. That must mean it is time for the Market Drivers Report, and that must mean we've got Dave Wilson.
Thanks, Charlie. ADRs are falling more than U.S. shares. The S&P ADR index is down 0.4%, and the S&P 500 is lower by 0.1%. Royal Bank of Scotland has fallen 7.5% in U.S. trading. The lender estimated it will spend as much as $1.3 billion this year to overhaul the English unit NatWest Markets. RBS plans to change its name to NatWest Group later this year. The Netherlands' VEON has lost 8.8%. Former Xerox CEO Ursula Burns resigned as head of the wireless company. VEON's co-chief operating officers will succeed her, and fourth quarter results showed lower sales in Russia, VEON's biggest market. Electricité de France has climbed almost 11%. Last year's earnings at the utility beat analysts' average estimate in a Bloomberg survey. The company predicted further profit growth this year based on higher retail power prices. And South Africa's Sibanye Gold has gained 5.5%. The precious metal producer said it expects to post a profit for 2019 after showing a loss in 2018. The rebound brings Sibanye closer to resuming dividends that were suspended 2 years ago, Charlie.
All right, we thank you very much, Dave Wilson, tracking those American depository receipts. Two additional headlines to pass along to you. First of all, the weekly rig count numbers out of Baker Hughes, closely followed by people in the oil industry. The oil rig count up by 2 this week to 678. Also, the head of the International Monetary Fund says global central banks and governments may need to unite to fight the economic fallout from the coronavirus. Gold up 0.5%, crude advancing by 0.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Balance of Power.
We have the strongest economy by far in the world.
We're going to grow our trade relationship.
I know what's broken. I know how to fix it.
Where the world of politics meets the world of business.
They've got the money they need to run a very competitive race.
We've got now a real crunch few days for Brexit.
We want certainty in the markets. We want certainty in our trading relationships.
The administration is trying to create a new divided world. Balance of Power with David Weston on Bloomberg Radio.
Fed officials come to terms with the fallout from the coronavirus. A court puts a hold on Microsoft's multi-billion-dollar Pentagon cloud contract, and President Trump contemplates further tax cuts if he's reelected. From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, welcome to the second hour of Balance of Power. One of the hallmarks of President Trump's first term in office were the tax cuts for corporations and individuals, something he credits with the strong economy. Now he's talking about a second phase, a so-called middle-class tax cut. To talk about what the president's tax policy has done so far and what's left to do, we welcome now Maddie Duppler. She is Senior Fellow at the National Taxpayers Union. Ms. Duppler earlier was the Coalition Director for the House Republican Conference. So welcome. Great to have you.
Thanks so much for having me.
So first, start off with, what do you believe the tax cuts that we had at the end of 2017 did for us?
Well, the short and uninteresting answer is we don't know yet. The longer and more interesting answer is that we do know some things, right? So we know that in 2018, 80% of taxpayers got a tax cut. About 15% saw their taxes stay the same, and about 5% of taxpayers saw higher taxes as a result of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. Now, the question has been, what's the dynamic feedback on that? What has that done for the economy? Well, that is the thing we can't quite tell with certainty because, of course, the implementation of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act did not happen in a static environment. Most interestingly, we had the U.S.-China trade escalation that really did create a lot of uncertainty for businesses. So while we had a lot of uncertainty against the backdrop of business decisions being made, we also know that the tariffs that resulted from the U.S.-China trade tensions created downward pressure on the American economy, probably to the tune of about $80 billion on American businesses and consumers. That certainly drove a stake through some of the growth that might have been expected from the tax cuts.
So obviously the way we paid for the tax cuts is by borrowing, increase the deficit. And one question is, did we get what we paid for? As you say, it's going to take us a while to figure it out. There are a lot of factors going in. We talked on Wall Street Week this week with Skanda Amaranth. He's at Employ America. He used to work for the New York Fed. He was an analyst. And this is what he had to say about the quality of the deficit we got and whether we really got the demand jolt that we wanted to get.
The quality of the deficit is really the thing that's most problematic in terms of, if we look at what happened with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, we saw the one-time sort of change in the corporate rate. We saw the widening out of deficits, but it didn't actually move the needle on demand in a meaningful way. So we didn't really see the growth acceleration in demand really sustain itself over a period of time. And we didn't really see the change in inflation either, to be honest.
So is he right? And if he's right, is that all attributable to uncertainty over U.S.-China trade?
I certainly think that you can't discount the uncertainty created by the U.S.-China trade tensions, because it's not just the tariffs. It's not just the question of the two largest economies on the globe competing with one another. It's the fact that the process of trying to get exemptions from the tariffs is very obscure. There's so much uncertainty built in because of this problem. I think that really did dampen certainly CapEx that we expected coming coming out of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. But this notion of the quality of the deficit, I think, is an interesting one, too. This is something that I think was a little bit disconcerting for those of us who've worked on tax policy for many years in Washington, D.C., when you have someone like a President Trump come in who's not someone who is fixed on dogma when it comes to tax policy. The notion that tax cuts should be revenue neutral flew right out the window. And that is something that Republicans and Democrats, of course, have agreed on for years. It was the cornerstone of the 1986 agreement, and it had been the starting point for many significant points of progress on taxes moving forward. The deficit, of course, the pressure created by the deficit compounds over time. I'm not sure that the quality of the deficit, quote unquote, now matters when we're still going to be paying that off years and years from now.
Well, I think one of the things that maybe Skanda was saying is, in terms of quality of the deficit, we can borrow for things and invest in things that redound to our benefit in the out years. That's a capital investment. When you're running a business, there's a big difference between a capital investment and an expense.
Sure.
The question is, were these tax cuts a capital investment in our overall economy, the way building roads or bridges, things like that would be, or was an expense in making some people, and particularly some corporations, feel good in the short term?
Well, the components of the tax cut that I say would be a capital investment have actually been parts of bipartisan agreement for many, many years. I mean, even the Obama administration had agreed that the corporate tax rate was far too high. Every Obama budget cut it down to 28% from the 35% it was prior to the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. Similarly, with full expensing, the Obama administration routinely expanded the ability of businesses to recoup their costs, thinking that that had a stimulative effect. Those components of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, for sure, are something that will increase economic growth down the line. It is something that we need to sustain, though, because, of course, parts of those expire starting in 2022 and 2025.
If expanding demand is one of the goals, actually, to get growth, fundamental growth going, talk about the middle class tax cut. We had actually Larry Kudlow, senior economic advisor to the president today, saying there's a 10% middle class tax cut he's thinking about if he gets reelected. How do we define the middle class in a way that will deliver the kind of demand we really want?
This is the challenge for the administration. Now, to be fair, the administration said at the outset of the tax reform debate in 2017 that there were two goals for the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, or what became the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. One was to make American businesses competitive again. That was cutting that corporate tax rate. The other was delivering for the middle class, and the cuts in the individual side, as well as increasing the standard deduction, the child tax credit. All of those contributed to the average taxpayer getting a tax cut as a result. Going into 2020, moving past this election even, the question is what space do you have left there? The bottom 20% of taxpayers don't have an income tax liability. Right. So the question would be, do you do something on income taxes where there's not as much space for the middle class to feel the impact of changes on income taxes? Or do you start looking at other parts of the tax code? The payroll tax, of course, comes to mind. And there's been a lot of debate between Democrats in the Democratic primary about whether or not cutting the payroll tax is appropriate given the liabilities that they fund. But on the Republican side, this hasn't received as much interesting conversation. And that would be, I think, something that the administration could look at if they were really looking to have a targeted tax break for the middle income workers, because, of course, all workers have a payroll tax liability.
Last question, the last minute or so here, maybe in 45 seconds. How do you regard the difference between the payroll tax and income tax? I mean, as somebody who's really studied taxes, what are the pluses and minuses?
I think that our income tax code at the federal level is very progressive. It is a little bit less progressive when you look at payroll taxes. So the question is, when you're targeting a tax cut and who you want to be getting the relief from that, a payroll tax, I think, obviously speaks to the thrust of a conversation about getting middle income workers included in that tax cut a little bit more. Now, the question is whether or not individuals recognize their tax cut when they receive it. Yeah. Wow, this is one of the challenges that I think taxpayers had as the result of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, was that folks didn't seem to notice that they had an extra $50 in their paychecks. So would they notice that their paychecks were a little bit bigger because that payroll tax liability was smaller? I'm not sure.
It's fascinating. Okay, thank you so much to Maddie Duppler of the National Taxpayers Union. Coming up, we're going to hear from Cleveland Fed President Loretta Mester, who just talked with our very own Mike McKee about the state of the economy and the coronavirus. That's coming up next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
A PAC needs someone to follow.
It's got to be important for somebody to have a breakout moment.
Don't look now, but they're behind you.
Imports declined 2.8%.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Sources tell us that agreement is expected to include commitments on U.S. intellectual property.
With Karen Moscow and Nathan Hager.
Could we see that play into the results and the forward guidance?
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Welcome back to the Dog Show. Up next, we have Satchmo. Satchmo is a member of the Shelter Pet Group.
That's right, a group known especially for their couch-snuggling, ball-chasing, face-licking, and, of course, companionship. Now, let's see him in action.
Look how he makes eye contact with his person.
That's actually known as the treat stare.
How intuitive. And now he appears to be excitedly turning in circles.
The happy dance so common with this group.
But really, the best way to know an amazing shelter pet like Satchmo is to meet one.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org today. Adopt.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba,
please be done.
Over and over and over and over and over, then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
A half-price dream holiday, wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free, wouldn't want to miss that. And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the U-Switch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
For up to 50% off selected floors and beds. For first-class fitting. For kicking your heels off. For overexcited kids. And pets. For thrills and spills. For a special welcome home. For up to an additional £250 off your total flooring order. Carpet Right for life. Terms and conditions apply.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
For gentlemen who value the quality of an exquisitely made shoe, Jones Bootmaker Master Shoemakers introduce the world-exclusive collection by Loke. Experience the comfort of the cushioned leather footbed and the sustainable, repairable Goodyear welted sole. The world-exclusive comfort collection by Jones Bootmaker and Loke, handmade in Britain. Available at Bow Lane, Broad Street, Fenchurch Street, German Street, Canary Wharf and stores nationwide. Or order online at jonesbootmaker.com.
You could find a £5, a £10, a 20, or even a crisp 50 inside the Sun on Sunday. That's right, cash! Yes, real banknotes inside the paper. We're giving away a wallet-busting amount of cash this weekend only in the Sun on Sunday. It pays to read The Sun. T's and C's apply.
The UK has now left the EU, and we're in a transition period until the end of the year. Throughout this period, the government will be forging new partnerships with the EU and the rest of the world. This could lead to new arrangements for trade, travel, and business. To find out about the changes and how they might affect you, go to gov.uk/transition.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Down Friday, stocks drifting lower on retail sales and virus data. We have got the S&P down 4 now, down 0.1%. NASDAQ also down 0.1%. The Dow dropping 97 now, down 0.3. 10-year up 12.30 seconds with a yield of 1.57%. Gold up 0.5%, 15.83 the ounce, and crude oil 51.78 a barrel. WTI up 0.7%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is the Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thanks so much to Charlie Pellet. From the Interactive Brokers Studio, this is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio. A short time ago, our colleague Michael McKee sat down with Cleveland Fed President Loretta Mester. Among other things, they talked about the U.S. economy and the coronavirus.
The numbers weren't particularly inspiring today. We had flat core retail sales and a revision down for December. We had a contraction in manufacturing production. Are these maybe early signs that the expansion is getting a little tired?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there are always going to be volatility in some of the monthly numbers. I think you have to take a little bit longer perspective. And if you look at the underlying fundamentals for the U.S. economy, they're pretty good, right? The consumer side has been holding up. Yeah, there's volatility in some of the numbers, but all in all, the fundamentals of higher income, household balance sheets look good. The jobs market has been, quite good. So I think the consumer side is holding up. The business side has been weak. We've had some signs of stabilization in the manufacturing side, so that's a good thing, notwithstanding today's numbers. That's kind of the way the U.S. economy has been. The consumer side has been driving things. The business side, for a number of reasons, has been weaker. But again, that looks like it's stabilizing too, and I expect it to pick up later in the year.
Has your forecast for growth for 2020 changed at all since the last time you submitted it in December?
Yeah. I think that, we now have some new risks including the coronavirus, so you have to take that into account when you're thinking about growth. But right now I'm thinking of that as a risk. I expect that certainly in China and perhaps in Asia, the first quarter numbers are going to be weaker. There could be spillover to the U.S. economy as well in the first quarter, and it remains to be seen by how much and for how long that'll persist. But in general, right, I'm seeing that as a risk to my forecast. I haven't marked down my forecast because of it.
Have your people been able to put any kind of numbers on the risk from the coronavirus?
It's very difficult. Usually the private sector numbers that I've seen are based on what was true with the SARS epidemic. But the world's a lot different than it was in 2003. For one thing, China is a much bigger part of the global economy than it was then. On the other hand, China is also a wealthier country than it was then, and they've already taken steps to try to limit the fallout, as have other countries. So it's very hard to make those comparisons at this point. Right now, we're just sort of evaluating number of cases like everyone else is, and then trying to figure out how much impact it'll have on the U.S. economy. Our focus is on the U.S.
You mentioned the manufacturing production contraction that we saw in January. Your district is the heart of manufacturing in this country. What are you hearing from factory owners and workers in your district?
Right. So all in all, the manufacturers in our district are saying they don't see things falling off the cliff at all. They're not worried about recession. On the other hand, they don't think things are necessarily going to pick up a lot. So, it's steady. Orders are coming in, but nothing to write home about, higher or lower. It's just basically steady as she goes.
That was Loretta Mester, head of the Cleveland Federal Reserve, talking with our very own Michael McKee. For more on the outlook for the economy, we welcome now Peggy Collins, Bloomberg managing editor for the U.S. economy. Peggy, welcome. Great to have you with us. So it strikes me that we hear Loretta Mester say she's not changing her forecast. She's not taking down her numbers. At the same time, it's got to be a negative risk on coronavirus. Isn't it just a matter of how much?
Well, it's been interesting, David, to your point that certainly the global economy and lots of banks and other analysts are marking down their projections for growth this year because of the coronavirus, particularly in the first quarter. But we've seen, as you said, Loretta Mester, and then earlier this week, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell say we're not marking our forecast down yet, in part because we want to see how persistent any damage or spillover to the U.S. economy could be and how big. We're thinking that part of that hesitation in marking down the outlook now, given how much the virus has spread, is because the Fed did already already cut 3 times last year. So potentially they feel like with those cuts last year that they were able to stave off some of the damage from the trade war uncertainty and slow down in manufacturing as a part of that, but also that they built in some cushion for any other shock. And this is certainly one of them. We're just not sure how much of a shock it will be yet to the U.S. economy.
What does the bond market think about that cushion? What do they think about future cuts this year?
Well, it's interesting. Great point, David, that traders themselves are actually thinking, you know what, we're going to see another cut this year. That needle has moved because of the virus from where we were at the end of the year when most investors were thinking the would be on hold all year or certainly through the November election.
How do we get a sense of exactly what the ramifications from the coronavirus will be, at least in the short term? I mean, just today we had the announcement of the Fiat Chrysler plant over in Serbia shutting down. There are supply shocks around the world as these supply chains get interfered with. How do we know? And what is the sort of dashboard that the Fed is using?
Well, I think it's really difficult for a couple of reasons. One is the fact that, the virus started to really spread at a time when many people in China were off for the New Year holiday. And so that was already built into some projections. Also, because of the fact that China, compared with when the SARS virus broke out in the early 2000s, it's such a bigger part of the global economy, as you were saying. So we've got two things that we're weighing. And the third piece of it is there's all this other data mixed in as to how much will the phase one deal that was struck in December between the U.S. and China actually help the economy now that there's actually the coronavirus that China is trying to deal with too. Today, the U.S.-China trade phase one deal goes into effect. So essentially that means that the clock starts ticking for promises that China has said in terms of adding and buying more purchases in the U.S. over this year and next to the tune of about $200 billion. But unclear yet whether the coronavirus could change the metrics on that.
And I'll add a fourth, which is an election in November. If the economy starts softening as we get toward November, you can bet that there's going to be a lot of pressure on the Fed from the White House.
That's right. And that is something that traditionally, and is certainly within this administration, because President Trump has been so vocal about his dissatisfaction with the Fed, and particularly with Powell for not cutting rates further, the Fed is in a position where at the beginning of this year, we thought they would be willing and able to stand hold and not cut rates to the end of the year, and that would be beneficial in an election year.
We shall see. Thank you so much. It's always a treat to have you. That's Bloomberg's Peggy Collins. Coming up, Amazon wins an early round in its court battle with Microsoft over the $10 billion Pentagon contract. We talk with Frank Murray of Foley & Lardner. That's coming up on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Investors looked under the hood of Hot Wheels sales and found some problems. Hot Wheels, Barbie, and Toy Story 4 sales weren't enough to carry Mattel to a sales increase for the holiday quarter. Its sales slipped 3%. Mattel saw higher profits because it cut costs. The NPD group says overall toy company sales last year fell 4%, and Mattel shares now are falling 5%. Must have gotten all the clothing we wanted or didn't for Christmas. Retail sales rose only 0.3% in January, and about half of that increase came from places such as Home Depot and Lowe's that sell lots of building supplies to small businesses. The retail segments that cater to households saw soft spending. On Wall Street, investors aren't finding too much to cheer in that soft increase in retail sales, up 0.3%. The coronavirus isn't showing any signs of easing either. Thousands more new cases were reported. The Dow is down now 84, the NASDAQ 5, the S&P 3. I'm Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
I'm a 40-year-old man that walked in there to get his high school diploma. It was very hard for me, but Miss Araceli, she gave me direction.
At age 47, Marco finished his high school diploma.
50% of getting your high school diploma is walking through the doors. The other 50% is doing the work.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, and try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
This is our story. The Birds of Prey.
Yeah. Roman is building an army. He's after all of us. We gotta clean the city from the inside out.
Critics are saying Margot Robbie is brilliant as Harley Quinn.
Hi, boys.
A fantastic assault on the senses. An irresistible riot of popcorn fun. Woo! Brilliantly acted and very funny. 4 stars. Birds of Prey. In cinemas now. Certificate 15.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go. From opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Balance of Power with David Weston.
Coming up on Balance of Power, a court tells Microsoft to stop work on its $10 billion Pentagon cloud contract. We're joined by my colleague June Grasso to talk about what this could mean for Amazon's chances of all success. First, let's get a market check with Charlie Pellet.
Hi, thank you very much, David Weston. We've got Microsoft shares up 0.3% right now. Amazon heading the other direction, down now by 1%. It is a down Friday here ahead of a long holiday weekend in the United States. Equities tumbling. We've got the S&P down 3, down 0.1%. Dow Jones Industrial Average down 95. That is a drop of 0.3%. Nasdaq lower by 7, a decline there of 0.1%. S&P giving up early session gains. The Dow sinking as energy firms and manufacturers slump, while investors crowd into havens like utilities and real estate. We've got the 10-year up 11/30 seconds, yield now 1.57%. Gold up 0.5%, $15.83 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.8%, $51.84 a barrel. Brent up 1.1%, $56.97. Retail sales rose for a fourth month in a row, and with that story, here's Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
January's 0.3% gain suggests consumers are hanging in there, generally strong, steady. Building materials posted a hefty gain. Retail stores, furniture, autos also up, but we could see wavering ahead. The Retail Control Group, which cuts through some of the noise, was flat. Still, consumers are hanging in there for now. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
After earnings last night, NVIDIA rallying 7.2%, Expedia up 10.7%. Recapping, stocks lower, S&P down 3, down 0.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that, David Weston, is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thanks so much, Charlie Pellet. When the Pentagon awarded its $10 billion cloud contract to Microsoft, Amazon called foul, claiming that President Trump had weighed in to keep it from winning. And then, Trump hasn't been very shy on his views on the subject.
We're getting tremendous, really complaints from other companies and from great companies. Some of the greatest companies in the world are complaining about it, having to do with Amazon and the Department of Defense. And I will be asking them to look at it very closely to see what's going on, because I have had very few things where there's been such complaining.
Now, the U.S. Court of Federal Claims has ordered Microsoft not to do any work on the contract until the court has a chance to review it. To take us through what this may signal, we welcome now my colleague June Grasso and Frank Murray. He's partner at Foley & Lardner in Washington, where he specializes in government contract law. So, Frank, first of all, how unusual is it for the court to stay work on the contract while the case is pending?
It's not very common. In the normal course of events, you have to make a showing that you're likely to succeed on the merits, and there's a weighing of the hardships involved as to whether it will be more prejudicial to stop the government from moving forward or to the competitor who's trying to get the contract if the contract is not stayed. So as the protester, as Amazon here, you're always trying to get the government to press pause on the procurement so that things aren't moving forward without you and the train's leaving the station to a certain extent without you on board. But it's a pretty high showing you have to make, and that's why in most cases you try to work out with the government whether they're willing to voluntarily pause for 3 or 4 months while the case is being litigated, which the government oftentimes will do because they recognize it's disruptive if you win on the protest at the end of the day and they have to go back to square one. It can be disruptive and more costly to them to start over. So sometimes they voluntarily pause. But when they're fighting you on it and say, we want to go forward, it's really important to move on, it's fairly unusual to win at that stage.
Does that mean that the chances of Amazon wresting at least some of this contract away from Microsoft just went up?
I think it did. When I have clients, we're doing bid protests ourselves, and there's a need to do a preliminary injunction motion. One of the things I try to say is that it's a lot, kind of a sneak peek, almost a canary in a coal mine as to how strong your case is going to be, because the judge really does. One of the things the judge is supposed to look at, one of the elements to show, is your likelihood of success on the merits. If you're not likely to win at the end of the day, then there's very little public interest being served in telling the government to stop when they don't want to. And so, while that's not the only thing that's being looked at, that's a very significant factor in the calculus. And if you get a judge early on to say, I think you've shown me enough that there's some real concerns here, I think you have a pretty good chance when this is all said and done, that's usually a very good sign that you're, on the right track to winning. It's not a guarantee. There have been cases where they've then at the end of the day found for the government, but it's certainly a pretty good sign for Amazon given the alternative.
So how long might it take? How long will the work be stopped while this situation is resolved, while the judge hears the case?
It's a little bit unusual in this case because they're asking for so much additional discovery. Normally in a bid protest where you're challenging a contract award, it's pretty much a paper case where you're looking at the evaluation records and the proposals, and everything's done on paper. And there it's usually a 3 or 4 month process, and if there's an injunction, the government, oftentimes asks the court if she'll try to handle it on a fairly expedited briefing schedule. Here you've got this whole separate issue that Amazon's raised, a further bias part of their argument, where they want to take depositions of people, and so that's unusual. That doesn't typically happen in a bid protest. And so if there is going to be that level of discovery and additional depositions taken, first that issue has to be litigated, and the judge has to agree, yes, I'm going to make these people give depositions. Then the depositions have to be taken and entered into the record, and then you'd have that as part of what's being looked at for the ultimate merits decision. So, it could be 6, 7, 8 months, I suppose, depending on how long the discovery takes, if that's going to happen. If the judge says, I don't need the deposition, let's move on the paper record, it's probably more 3 or 4 months.
One of the people they want to depose is President Trump and Defense Secretary Mark Esper. That's not likely going to happen.
Yeah, that's certainly, as I'd phrase it, that's a very large ask in a bid protest case. And while I think it would make for entertaining television or other opportunities, it strikes me that the people who are most relevant to the issue of bias are the ones who are involved in making the source selection decision, which is at a lower level, obviously, than President Trump for sure, and Secretary Esper probably not as much either. So I would be surprised if those are given as depositions.
Well, Frank, just let me argue the other side of it for a moment. I don't think in most bid protests you have the allegation that the President of the United States went to the Secretary of Defense and essentially directed him to make the award one particular way. If that is the allegation, how do you get to the bottom of that without having testimony from the President? And we've already seen the President is reluctant, I think it's fair to say, to answer subpoenas or respond in any way, shape, or form. And if he refuses, what do? You can't default the government here.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting if she were to order a deposition and you have the whole situation like you had with some of the impeachment things where it's, well, I'm not going to do it. It would be interesting to see how that gets enforced. I think one way of looking at it is that President Trump, certainly, you played a clip at the beginning, he's made a lot of public comments. His animus through his tweets and everything else are out there. But it really doesn't matter if President Trump is just tweeting and the decisional official said, yeah, I know President Trump doesn't like Amazon, but I didn't consider that at all. Here's what I considered. I didn't have anybody tell me that I had to do X, Y, or Z. I just looked at the merits of the proposal and I said...
But Frank, not to be cute, but how did that work in the sentence recommendation for Roger Stone when the president tweeted? It seemed to get changed pretty quickly.
Well, it did. And so I understand why Amazon's asking for it, and certainly it would be helpful to them if they could get folks at a higher level like Secretary Esper or even President Trump to sort of do the Colonel Jessup from A Few Good Men. Yes, you're right, I ordered the code red.
There you go.
But again, whether they would actually admit to something like that would be interesting. Usually in a deposition, you want to have some documentary evidence. You want to show them and say, what did you mean when you emailed this?
They couldn't get the Commerce Secretary in the case of the citizenship question on the census. So,
but June, we needed one more theater.
Yes, we did.
We're running short on theaters. Yeah, exactly. Okay, thanks very much to my colleague June Grasso and to Frank Murray of Foley and Lardner. Coming up, getting to know our presidents not as political leaders, but as authors. We talk with literary historian Craig Fairman, who's written the new book, Author in Chief.